Curves 'Em Right. Paranormal Dating Agency, Book 4. Written by Millie Taiden. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. One. Daniela Flores glanced around the library she worked at and sighed. She pushed her glasses above her head and scrubbed her eyes. Another boring day in the life of a librarian. Stacks of romance books sat on her desk. As an avid reader, she tended to get lost in the love between the pages of a good book. Hell, might as well. Not like her love life was seeing any mileage. Her cell phone buzzed, and she immediately snatched it up, hoping that something interesting was going on with somebody she knew. The last thing she wanted was to sit there and field calls for her brother, Marcos. Sure enough, a glance at her screen told her it was her brother calling. Call me. Wow, a man of so many words. Not. She left her assistant watching the empty library and walked outside. The main street in Red Valley was unusually quiet for the middle of the day. She dialed her brother and slowly strolled down to the bakery next to the library. Already, the scent of fresh-baked cookies and scones made her mouth water. At least it wasn't Tom again. She hated the multiple calls with the school teacher, who had recently proposed in a very unusual way. "Hey, Marcus, what's going on?" She stared at the display of baked goods. At the same time, her stomach rumbled. She should go eat that salad she left in the office fridge instead of drooling over a piece of cake.
"Danny, you at work?"
"Duh." She waved at her friend Aurelius, the baker, through the glass window.
"How old are you, 12?
Marcos admonished. "Now I know very well how old I am." As if her upcoming birthday wasn't enough to remind her she was over 30, her coworkers were good at constantly asking her when she would find a man and settle down. It was like all three of them had decided she was in desperate need of a man because they all had one.
"Listen, you know I'm going out of town for a few weeks. It's the annual fishing trip with some of the guys from college."
Ah, yes. The lovely 3 weeks when she got to have 2 jobs, her own and sitting for her brother's dogs. Yeah. I know you want me to take care of the hounds from hell."
"If you'd stop feeding them all day long, they wouldn't attack you for a treat every few seconds,"
he said, sounding impatient. "Hey, so I'm a little soft around the big mutts. I can't help it. They're cute." Well, cute in a dog's almost as big as her kind of way.
"Stop overfeeding the dogs, Danny. Anyway, if you need anything, Blake and Kane are only a short walk away."
Oh boy, Blake and Kane. When she thought of them, her heart did that stupid flip-flopping in her chest that she'd swear meant she was going to have a heart attack. Blake and Kane. Shifters. Hot. Badasses. And so out of her league. She'd given up on them noticing her since she was 16. They were around her brother's age, which made them only about 5 years older than her, but boy were they sexy. Since they'd been friends with Marcos for the longest time, she'd been around the pair most of her life. They'd never seen her as more than Marcos's little sister, even though she'd tried, much to her embarrassment. Remembering the episode where she'd put on her mother's heels and had tried to walk around the guys, only to fall flat on her ass, made her cringe. She knew better now. She stayed away from all that sexy if she could help it. "I'll be fine." In fact, the last time she'd seen them was a few years back, and they lived pretty close to her brother.
"Okay then. Call them if you need anything."
"Stop worrying. I love you. Now go have fun. See you in a few weeks." She hung up the phone, pushed the door to the bakery wide open, and inhaled. "Oh, Aurelius, how can you do this to me?" She moaned and grabbed the piece of cake her friend put on the counter for her. "You're evil," she grumbled as she took a bite. Another moan escaped her when the cake touched her tongue. "Really evil." Aurelis laughed, added some cookies, fruit, and a scone to the plate, and carried it to a table where drinks were already waiting for them. I knew you'd come over here. Frankly, I prefer to just get everything ready rather than hear you complain over how long it took me to get you a piece of cake. She sipped on her latte and sighed. Instead of cake, which she should be eating was the salad at work waiting for her. But she'd never been that much into salad, unless it was accompanied by a piece of chicken or fish. A lonely salad didn't feel like lunch. It was more like torture. I'm supposed to be eating healthier. Aurelis grinned. How's that working for ya? They both knew the answer to that. Danny had a lot of curves. She wasn't little anywhere, and for the most part, she was okay with that. It was when her coworkers roped her into their healthy eating challenges that she became a female version of Hulk. She was not very nice if she was hungry. I've lost some self-respect. Does that count as weight loss? Aurelis choked on a giggle. Why would you say that? What did you do? Come on. I have to hide what I eat from the weight-obsessed women at work, or I won't hear the end of it. Doesn't help that one of them is my boss. Yeah, that part sucks. Aurelis picked up a grape and popped it into her mouth. This isn't technically unhealthy. We have fruit. Which I will gladly eat along with my scone, thank you very much. She drank her coffee and sat back with a sigh. Her boss and coworkers weren't exactly mean. Danny would never sit there and let anyone talk shit about her weight to her, but they were stuck on the fact that she needed to lose some weight and be healthier. Do you tell them how many miles you walk and how you measure your food? Aurelis asked. No, if I did, all it would do was open other doors for them to try and help me. It was true. Her weight wasn't really a problem for Danny. After going through mass dieting as a teen, she realized her body tended to be on the big girl side, and she was okay with that. So why did it bother her coworkers so much? It wasn't like she sat down doing nothing all day. She walked, she ate healthy, and she only ate cake a few times a month. You should just tell them you're fine the way you are. Suggest they worry about their own problems instead of your body. She was close to doing just that, but she didn't want the backlash that would follow, especially from her boss. The woman had gotten it into her head that Danny couldn't possibly know what healthy eating was because she was big, or that she needed to be told to exercise when Danny walked to and from work every day, which was a few miles each trip. So she had a sweet tooth. Big friggin' deal. I might have to quit this job if they don't stop it, she said, and bit into a strawberry. She scrunched her nose at the way the flavor of the fruit didn't go with her coffee. They're going to drive me to murder. Aurelis raised a brow. Wow, that bad, huh? I told you, just tell them to mind their own business. She chewed the fruit slowly. They weren't this bad before. I don't know what's gotten into them. The fact they're getting married and think the only thing standing between you and your dream man is your extra pounds. Danny snorted. Too bad. Whatever man decides to love me is going to have a lot to love because I'm not going to kill myself to lose weight just to please a guy. I'm a big girl. I have curves. That we do, Aurelis agreed. I have flub and big thighs and a pudgy belly, and if a man loves me, then he won't care. Also true. And any man who likes me will like my body as is. I'm not expecting to meet a man and immediately look for ways to change him, so he has to do the same with me. Hear, hear. Aurelis raised her coffee cup in salute. You said it, chica. Danny giggled and broke off a piece of her scone. I'm telling you, I'm sick of all the expectations some people have. This is me. Like it or don't, but I won't change for anybody. And that's as it should be, said a third person. The women glanced over to the bakery entrance and saw an older woman walking in. Hi, Mrs. Wilder. Aurelis waved her over. Come sit with us. I think I will, Mrs. Wilder stated, strolling over to their table. She was an older woman with a commanding presence and impeccable attire. Her powder blue dress appeared to have been made for her. Though clearly older, she'd aged gracefully. With bright eyes and a wide smile, Danny could tell that she was definitely comfortable with herself. "What are you doing here? You and I both know your cake can kick mine in the ass." Aurelis smiled. "Child, please. We both know cake is like beauty. Different preferences for different people." Mrs. Wilder eyed Danny with interest. "You must be Daniela." She smiled wide. How the woman knew her, she couldn't know, but her best guess was that Aurelis had mentioned her lunchtime visits. "I am. Let me start off by saying that whatever you've heard is probably true, but was either done under the influence of too much or not enough liquor." Mrs. Wilder broke into laughter. "I like her." "Uh-oh," Aurelis said. "That's never a good sign." "That's not true." Danny winked at her friend. "What if Mrs. Wilder has a super hot son she wants to hook me up with? She'll change her mind listening to you." Mrs. Wilder raised a brow. "Please, call me Jerry." "And she probably can hook you up with a sexy guy, but I don't think she has a son. Do you, Jerry?" Aurelis asked. "I don't. Sadly, my husband and I never had children. As far as finding you a man—" Her gaze roamed over Danny's face, searching for something. "I can help you find a mate if that's what you would like." Danny shook her head and laughed. "I was kidding." Aurelis's eyes widened. "No, she can help you. She has a matchmaking business, the paranormal dating agency. They're shifters. Hot shifters." "Really? But—" "Wait, what about Tom?" Aurelis asked. Jerry frowned. "You're seeing someone?" Danny groaned. "Only in his mind. We've gone to some local events in a group, and somehow he's now under the impression we'd make a great match." She frowned. "I disagree." Aurelis grinned. "He's very persistent." Danny pursed her lips. "I keep rejecting him, and he keeps coming back for more. I think he's a masochist. Jerry, I don't know." Jerry raised a hand to stop her mid-speech. "I do think I have what you need." The door dinged, and Aurelis stood. "I have to go take care of this delivery, but you sit here and talk. I'll be back soon." She patted Jerry on the shoulder. "I'll send someone over to bring you tea." Jerry nodded and turned to face Danny fully. "Are you looking for a match?" Was she? She'd given up on being the cream in a Kane and Blake's cookie sandwich years ago, but most men were afraid of her brother and didn't usually survive past the talk he had with them, the "hurt my sister and I'll hurt you" talk. She'd had boyfriends, but after a while she lost interest. The men she dated were boring. It was one thing for her to live with her head in romance books, and quite another to make her own romance happen. Reality was, she dated boring accountants and teachers, and the combination was lacking more than a little in every area. So much so that she ended up breaking things off after a few months. No man held her interest long enough for her to fall in love, or even fall in lust. "I might be harder for you to match than your usual clients," she started. "I'm a librarian. I love romance novels. My expectations of what a relationship should be about are pretty way out there." Jerry nodded. "Tell me what it is you want." She pulled out a notepad from her handbag and started jotting stuff down. I guess I'd like to find that connection with someone that's real. No fake shit." She thought back to her last relationship and winced. "I'm tired of men thinking they're doing me a favor by being with me. I want a man who will be dying to be with me. Not just some lame sex with the guy who thinks he has to settle for the big girl." She stared Jerry in the eyes. "If I'm matched with any man who acts like I should be glad he's even looking at me, I won't be responsible for what happens." "No need for that. The men requiring my services love curves. They appreciate and want a woman for who she is. Generally, my clients prefer someone who loves the body she has, ideally with lots to hold on to.
Danny blinked.
And these are shifters, like Aurelis said?
Jerry nodded slowly.
All of them.
Wow. She sighed.
That's good then. May I ask, are you averse to multiples?
Say what?
I'm sorry, what do you mean? Multiple what? Dates? Multiple men. I'm not sure if you are aware, but some shifter packs have what's called a triad. That means 2 leaders need a female to complete their alpha set and lead the pack. Together. They mate together and they sleep together, almost all the time.
She raised her brows in surprise.
You mean like a menage, but forever? Yeah. Happily menage ever after. Well, shit. Count me in. I don't care if you can get me 1, 2, or a whole pack of men who want me. As long as they genuinely want to be with me and are not just doing it out of some duty to help out the fat girl. My clients are not that kind. They're aggressive, possessive, jealous. They love their women because of their curves, not despite them, and they will show it. They sound like what I need.
Jerry stopped writing and cocked her head to the side.
You know, I really like you. You're very open-minded.
No, she was sort of desperate from the sounds of stuff coming out of her mouth. The likelihood there'd be 2 men out there who'd want her for a partner was not something she fully grasped. And while she was more than okay with her body and her curves, the reality was there were a lot of men out there who were not. She wasn't blind or stupid. She knew that.
All right, I think I have a good idea of what you need, Daniela.
Jerry shut the notebook and slipped it into her bag. She glanced at Daniela's hair.
Uh-oh. Do you normally wear shades of purple in your hair?
Danny smiled.
Not really. I recently went wild and decided I wanted to get some purple in there. My boss wasn't amused, but since I've been at the library for years, she didn't cause a stir. I normally wear my hair in a bun, so you can barely see the purple. I think it's beautiful. It's good to see a different kind of librarian,
Jerry said.
She frowned.
You mean because of the hair?
Or the fact I'm not wearing a buttoned-up blouse with dress pants? That dress is very pretty, Jerry pointed out. It makes you look very youthful. She snorted a giggle. Nah, I just don't like wearing buttoned-up anything. I feel like it's choking me. Though my boss has tried. But she's used to me doing my own thing. Don't get me wrong, I wear some covered-up stuff some days, and then when I feel all girly, I put on pretty dresses. See? That's another thing I like. You're not afraid to break rules and go your own way.
She sighed.
Well, that's more due to my older brother. He's always been very overprotective, and somehow that's pushed me to want to be a little rebellious.
She laughed.
Not much, since I am still a librarian, but enough to get me to wear a low-cut dress once in a while and put purple in my hair. That's enough to let your personality shine through.
She glanced down at her watch and groaned.
I need to get back to work.
She pulled out a piece of paper and pen and wrote down her information,
handed it to Jerry, and stood. It was really nice to meet you, Jerry, she said, shaking Jerry's hand. I don't expect miracles, so if you can't find anyone for me, I'll understand.
Jerry's lips lifted in a wide grin.
Have some faith. I know of a few men who'd love to meet someone as spunky as you.
She cleared her throat, ribbons of heat crowding her cheeks.
Thanks. I'll wait for you to call with further information. You bet. I'll get in touch with you later, Jerry promised.
She went back to her office feeling excited. Maybe Jerry wouldn't find her the perfect man, but she was sure any shifter she got matched with
would be a lot more interesting than the men she dated her entire life.
2. Kane swung the axe into the piece of wood, splitting it in half without much effort. "Hello, darling," his mother called out from his kitchen entrance. He knew she loved to visit, since she considered him to be a loner. Though his Omega, Blake, lived next door, they wouldn't share a home until they had a mate to bring them together. "Hello, Mother," he said, swinging his axe again on the final piece of wood. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand and turned to glance at her. "Come inside. I'll make you some lunch and we can talk," she said, her smile wide with enthusiasm. That couldn't possibly be good. His mother had been trying to push him and Blake to accept one of the women in the pack as a mate, but she knew the rules. Their animals had to be in agreement that whoever the female they ended up with was right. And right didn't just mean appeal sexually. She had to appeal to the human and animal sides. She'd have to bring a link to make the triad strong and the alpha set unique. He slammed the axe down once more and left it wedged in the center of the tree trunk. The day had started to chill. With summer almost on its way out, he and Blake would need to move soon and get a mate. The problem was, no female in the pack caught their attention. He entered the kitchen, and his mother stood by the island, while Blake sat at the dining table. "I'm so glad you're both here," his mother said. "Yeah, definitely not good." "What's going on, Mother?" She stopped fixing sandwiches and turned to him, a frown marring her features. "You know, if I didn't know better, I'd say you're already skeptical of my visit." Blake snorted and leaned back in his seat. His Omega and pack co-leader knew him so well. "That's because he is, Margaret." She sniffed and continued preparing lunch. "I had an idea." "I'll be right back," he called out as he walked past. He washed his hands and took off his sweaty t-shirt, tossing it in a basket in the laundry room next to the kitchen. Before his mother got a chance to talk about whatever she wanted, he rushed to his room for a quick shower. No way was he going to sit and eat lunch when he was so sweaty. After showering, he threw on a pair of jeans and a clean shirt, and hurried back before she started calling out to him. "So what did you want to tell me?" he asked back in the kitchen. "I was about to tell you my idea before you rushed out of here." "Mother, your ideas always mean one of us has to settle for a woman we don't want, a woman who won't complete us." He sighed and sat down at the table. "A woman who's not right for us." She rolled her eyes and pursed her lips. "If you weren't so damn hard-headed, you'd have found a mate by now. But all you want to do is sit in the backyard building furniture. And you," she said, pointing a chef knife at Blake. "All you ever look at are the pack accounts like they're suddenly going to disappear overnight." Kane grinned. The look of confusion in Blake's eyes was funny. His Omega couldn't live without being emotionally linked to the pack or physically connected to his laptop and cell phone. Blake was a businessman with his own accounting firm and enough work to make anyone wince. On top of that, he had pack accounts and pack emotions to handle. It wasn't easy being the Omega. "Margaret, people in the pack stressing creates issues. I help them reduce stress. Money creates stress. I handle their money and ensure their life savings are well taken care of." Yeah, we all know that." She rolled her eyes, dismissing him. "Anyway, I invited someone to come over and join us for lunch." She grinned and neatly placed the sandwiches on a large tray. "She'll be here shortly, and she's going to help." "Mother." She pinned him a serious stare. "I don't want to hear anything. You've tried your way, now you're trying mine." Blake raised his brows in question. Kane knew what Blake wondered. What was his mother up to now? "What is it we're trying?" he asked, rolling his shoulders and lifting his arms over his head. His mother smiled. It was the same smile she gave him when he was a kid, and it was the night before his birthday. He tried to get her to tell him what he was getting as a gift. She'd never told, and she'd shocked him every single time. You're going to talk to my friend, Jerry, and she's going to find you two a mate."
"Uh-oh,"
Blake groaned. He finally put his phone away and paid attention to Kane and Margaret.
"Mother, I've told you we can find our own mate."
"You know what? You two are the most pig-headed men I have ever met," she yelled. "I can't believe I birthed you, Kane Reed."
Damn it. She was going the emotional route. "Mom."
"No, don't mom me. It would serve you right to find a mate, and then for her to be a difficult woman that would give you both gray hairs."
Wow, that was just mean. "No need to get all hysterical, Mother."
She inhaled and let it out while glaring at him. "You're right. There's no need." The doorbell rang, and she wiped her hands with a paper towel. "I'll get that. That's Jerry." She smirked. "Let's see how well you do with her." The minute she stepped out of the kitchen, Blake turned to him.
"So is this for real? Your mother is going to ask the PDA lady to find us a mate?"
Kane opened his eyes wide.
"PDA? You know Jerry?" "Paranormal dating agency. Who doesn't know Jerry? She's Connor and Theron's aunt from the Wildwoods pack further to the south, and she's the one who matched them with each other."
Right. He knew them. Like the Red Valley pack, Wildwoods were formed of a triad alpha set leading the pack. The Alpha, Omega, and their female. Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea.
"I don't think she can get that lucky twice in a row,"
Kane said. Blake snorted.
"Are you kidding me? This is Jerry Wilder. She can find the perfect match for a ketchup bottle."
Kane grinned.
"What's that? An order of fries?"
Blake laughed and slapped a hand on the table, making the sandwich tray jump. He then eyed the sandwiches.
"Think she'll get mad if I grab one?"
He leaned back in his seat.
"Well, depends. How much do you value your hand?" "Ouch. Never mind. So what if Jerry can find us a mate?"
Kane shook his head, sliding his fingers through his hair.
"I doubt it."
Blake smirked in such a way Kane knew he was up to something.
"Care to make it interesting?"
"All the time." He returned without missing a beat.
"I say she'll find us the perfect mate. And if she does, that means you'll have to stop building shit for a while and get to know whoever we get."
He curled his lips in mock horror.
"Are you out of your mind? I build stuff for a living."
Blake narrowed his eyes.
"You're the Alpha of Red Valley. You can do whatever the hell you want. I am your Omega, your financial analyst, accountant, and best friend. I would know." "Fine," he growled. "I'll do it. But let it be known that I think this isn't even remotely likely to happen."
He picked up an apple from a bowl of fruit in the center of the table and took a bite, chewed, and swallowed.
"What do I get if she doesn't find us a mate?"
Blake shrugged in his perfectly pressed shirt.
"I don't know. What do you want?"
He thought about it for a moment.
"We'll go to another town and search for a woman. No more putting me off on that."
Blake sighed.
"Fine. We'll search elsewhere. Although that alone can give us problems with some of the pack women, not to mention the men." "I'm the Alpha. I don't care what anyone thinks. If they have a problem, they can come to me. By the way, did Marcos call you?"
He remembered his good friend's request for him to keep an eye on his baby sister.
"Yeah, check on Danny and all that."
Blake frowned.
"I feel like we haven't seen her in years." "That's because we haven't. She went off to college, came back, and has been living in a library ever since." "She lives in a library?"
Blake asked, looking confused.
"Not literally. She works there."
He remembered Daniela. She'd always been shy as a kid, and he also remembered she liked both him and Blake, more than she should have, considering how young she was. Back then, he'd been hell-bent on ignoring her and any attraction he felt for her. She'd been a minor, and even worse, his friend's little sister. Not that it took away from how much he'd wanted her, or how his wolf had gone crazy pushing him to mate her. That had been massively scary. She was such a nice girl, so quiet, reserved, never a bad word out of her lips. Blake mused. I think she had a thing for us. Kane nodded. Yeah, and if we want to keep our friendship with Marcos, we'll ignore that thing and focus on finding our third. The sound of voices approaching from the living room had them cutting their conversation short. Both men stood and waited for Margaret and her friend to show up. The women walked in a second later. "Boys, I want you to meet my friend Jerry Wilder," his mother said with enthusiasm. "Jerry, this is Kane, my son," she said, pointing to him. "And that handsome boy with those big brown eyes is Blake." Kane choked on a chuckle and grinned at his mother's friend. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Wilder." Jerry Wilder glanced at his face for a moment. The ring of gold around her eyes was bright with her animal. She did the same with Blake and nodded. "I can help you both." He wanted to roll his eyes. "Really? Just like that?" This lady definitely couldn't find them a mate when they had looked at every possible female in Red Valley and the adjoining areas and hadn't been able to find one themselves. "Mrs. Wilder," Blake began. "Call me Jerry." "Jerry, we've looked at every female in Red Valley. There's no one here. I'm not sure you really can help us." "You see what I mean?" Margaret barged in, her eyes narrowed. "Yes, you were right. They are pig-headed," Jerry said. "I'll still find them someone if you want." "Oh, please." Margaret hugged Jerry. "They need our help. Sit down and eat. We can tell them whatever you feel they need to know." Jerry stared at Kane for a quiet moment before smiling. "You don't think I can find you someone?" He grinned, not hiding his thoughts. "No. I apologize. It's not that I don't think you're good at matching people with their right mate. But we're in need of a third to join our triad. Not only that, but if the female we mate doesn't take to shifting, we could have serious problems with the pack. Things are a lot more complicated than finding a pretty face to sleep with." Jerry raised her brows high. "She must be pretty." Ah, fuck. What the hell had he gotten into? "Not necessarily pretty, but definitely hot. Physical attraction would be necessary." "What do you consider hot?" she asked. "A woman with no physical flaws, a slim figure, and so on?" He frowned. Was she crazy? Slim? No. Not that I haven't been with a smaller woman, but we prefer a woman with curves, he said, holding his hands out and making an hourglass shape. Big curves. Jerry grinned. "And you agree?" she asked Blake. He nodded. "Curves are sexy. They make a woman real. We want someone who is happy being in her own skin, that likes her body, and can find herself being sexually appealing to us." "Okay, so no shy virgins here, huh?" asked Jerry. Blake choked on his drink and slapped a hand over his mouth, obviously trying hard not to spit it all over. He visibly swallowed and coughed repeatedly before answering her. "She can be shy if that's her, but we'd like someone who is willing to try things. She's going to have 2 men, for Christ's sake. That means she should at least be open-minded." "Right. The wolves want a freak." Jerry laughed. "Well, if half my clients were this specific, I'd never get anyone hooked up." Kane's mother grinned and patted Jerry on her arm. "You and I both know your nephew and his Omega are loving their new mate." "True." Jerry gave Kane a shrewd gaze. "What about love? I don't want to hear crap about not needing love, because no woman will want to even consider a lifetime relationship without the possibility of love." He dropped his shoulders and sighed. "If love happens, it happens. I'm not opposed to it. I don't think Blake is either." He waited for Blake to agree. Once he saw his Omega nod, he went on. "But a woman willing to take on 2 mates, a difficult pack, and the change can be a lot to ask for." Not to mention she has to be curvy, a freak in bed, and probably a great cook, huh?" Jerry asked. Blake laughed. "It could really help us out if she was." "I never promised miracles. I promised a mate." That sounded ominous. "Right. So can you help?" Jerry's lips tilted upward in a slow smile. "Here's what I want you to do." Three. Danny pushed the mask higher on her face and winced. A masquerade ball blind date. This was what she'd allowed herself to be talked into. All to meet a man that might be the one for her. When Jerry mentioned her annual ball would be the place she'd meet her date, she hadn't given it much thought. But now that she wore the zipped-up, tight red corset with leather accents and a short black bustle skirt that showed off her thigh-highs, she wondered if she'd lost her mind. Probably. Okay, not probably. Definitely. Lord help her when she had to go to the bathroom. She'd have to ask someone for help. Why did she let her neighbor and good friend make the damn thing so tight she felt like her boobs were going to pop out any second and flash the party a big hello? She'd wanted to feel sexy, and she had, until she reached the front door of the massive mansion in the woods. The place was huge with expensive cars lined up along a circular driveway. She pulled the short red cape around her shoulders, trying to take the attention away from her breasts. It was useless. She'd thought a sexy Red Riding Hood outfit would be great for a masked ball, but now she felt all sorts of uncomfortable. Jerry was easy to find. She stood at the center of the grand ballroom, dressed as a Greek goddess. Her long toga and gold armbands looked amazing on her. She rushed over to Danny's side and hugged her. "Daniela, so nice to see you." "How did you know it was me?" Stupid costume did a bad job of hiding her identity. She'd gone with her contacts for the night, hoping they would help her look sexier than having black-rimmed glasses over a face mask. Jerry grinned. She was the only person without a mask. "I consent to you, which defeats the purpose of the mask. Come with me." She tugged her to a side door and into a private parlor. Danny glanced around the sumptuously decorated room. It looked like something straight out of a romance novel. A massive 4-poster bed with big satin pillows and sheer drapes sat in the middle of the room. Jerry sauntered over to a locked case and used a key to open it. She brought out a box of pills and a spray bottle and turned to face Danny. She opened the box and took out a small pill, passing it to Danny. "Put that on your tongue," she said. "It will dissolve before you know it." Danny did as she was told. The little pill was tasteless, and in the blink of an eye had dissolved. Next, Jerry put down the box and pointed the spray bottle at her. "Come here, child. Let's make this interesting." Her words worried Danny a little. What was the woman up to? She moved closer and stood in front of her, thinking Jerry would spray her with a perfume or something of the kind. She did spray her, but there was no discernible smell to the spray. Jerry did a full circle, spraying her from head to toe until she swore she was covered in whatever the mist was. Then she went as far as sniffing her neck and back. "Open your hands." She sprayed her hands and feet. Heck, she even told her to lift the skirt so she could get at her lower body. Once Jerry sniffed a few more times and seemed satisfied with whatever she'd done, she smiled and put the bottle back in the case. "I don't smell anything, Jerry," she said, smelling her hands and arms. "That's the idea," Jerry smiled. "The thing is, I need you to have an open mind tonight." Uh-oh. Why did that sound like she should be worried? "I do have an open mind. I'm here in this Playmate Red Riding Hood costume, aren't I?" Jerry chuckled and sat on an antique chair by the bed. "You are, but there's something I need you to do for me." "What?" "Follow your instinct tonight. You might find yourself in a position to choose something new over what you are used to. I want you to listen to your heart." She nodded. She wasn't really used to anything. Her disappointment in men came from their inability to accept her as she was. Some of them thought she was the kind who felt so insecure about her body that she had to be okay with any man offering sex, that she wasn't worthy of a real relationship based on a man thinking she was hot. Fuck that. She knew she was hot. Maybe not in the way society deemed women to be hot, but she was. Her body had curves. She had big hips and a small waist. Men had not gotten the message that Danny wasn't desperate to hear pretty words. She wanted real words. She wanted to see the passion and lust in a man's eyes. She wanted to be taken up against a door and have her clothes torn off her. She did not want to hear about him needing a few beers before the word sex popped up. That was not romantic. "Now, I'm going to have someone usher you to the open indoor garden on the right side of the house. Hang out there, and your date will meet up with you." She nodded and gulped. Jerry had mentioned she'd find her a man that would want her as she was, and not try to change her into something else. Someone that looked like what he thought his dream girl should be. They strolled out of the room together, and a man showed up to guide her away. She waved at Jerry and left the older woman smiling in the middle of the room. That smile sort of creeped her out a little. Aurelis had told her that Jerry was a great matchmaker that could decide to hook her up with someone she might not be expecting. At that moment, all she expected was a decent man. Her escort led her down a long hallway, bypassing people in costume to a set of French doors. She went through and gasped. There was a giant private indoor garden, the size of her house on that side. Large glass doors had been opened to allow guests in and out of the garden. At the moment, it was empty, and she was the only one there. She walked around, fascinated with the multitude of plants and flowers. Then she saw it, a giant swing in the center of the room, facing the outdoors and the forest. The swing was a giant two-person seat, covered in white and pink frilly lace cushions. The ropes it hung from on the ceiling were twined with sheer fabric. The seat looked inviting and comfortable, not to mention incredibly romantic. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said. She glanced around the room, her gaze searching through the pockets of darkness to find a figure leaning against a pillar by a door. "It's very beautiful," she said softly. Shit. When the hell had her voice turned so low and husky? "If you're looking to be alone, I can go." He left the wall and prowled to her. The light filtering from outside allowed her to make out his costume. She didn't know what he was. Her best guess was a pirate. His pants were torn, as was his shirt. His chest was exposed for her view. The closer he came, the more nervous she got. "I'm here to meet you," he said. She frowned, paying more attention to his voice. She knew that voice. "Kane?" His lips lifted in a sinful smile that made her belly heat with desire. "That's me. And you're my little red, I guess." She wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. This was Kane, her brother's best friend. How could he not realize it was her? Kane had never looked at her with all that open hunger before. He eyed her up and down as if she was a meal and he was starving. "I am," she said, her voice still a mere whisper. If Kane was here, that meant, "She looks just as good from behind as she does from the front," another voice said. She glanced over her shoulder. Sure enough, it was Blake, in a costume identical to the one Kane had on. She knew she'd worn a face mask, but how did they not recognize her? Of course, they never really seen her like this, without her glasses, and the last time she'd seen the two of them was years ago, when she was in college. Back then, she'd hidden behind big, long dresses and sweats. It was only a few years ago that she'd changed her whole way of dressing to blend with her personality. "You're Blake," she breathed, as the two men crowded around her. Cain removed his face mask and sniffed. His brows dropped down in a frown. "I can't scent you." Blake touched her arm, and goosebumps broke over her skin. She glanced at him and watched him inhale. "I can't either." "You're not supposed to scent me," she said, her voice growing huskier. "You're supposed to follow your instinct." She fed them the same line Jerry had given her. It was like her biggest fantasy come true. Blake and Cain. Both men she'd wanted years ago, paying attention to her. She wanted to say something, but feared the more she spoke, the easier it would be for them to realize it was her. She didn't want the fantasy to end. If she could get a night with them, she would give up Aurelius's cakes for a year. Okay, a month. But that was huge for her. "Take the mask off," Cain said, reaching for her hand. She shook her head, feeling brave under the mask. These men were her brother's friends. They would run out of that garden faster than a speeding bullet if they knew it was her. For years, she'd known that being Marcus's sister had made her the one person they wouldn't touch. So she'd stayed away from them. Not like she needed the temptation anyway. But now here they were, both showing interest in her, and she had done nothing but stand there and say a handful of words. Maybe she wouldn't find her one true love tonight, but she was sure going along with whatever these two had in mind for her. "I'd feel better with it on," she whispered, keeping her voice soft. It wasn't hard when her chest felt tight from lack of oxygen. Sweat gathered in her palms. She swiped them on the short skirt, gripping the material in her fists. Cain drew closer, his face mere inches from hers, and inhaled. "Nothing. It's so strange. I can't scent you, but something tells me you're the right one." Excitement flooded her veins in a quick, dizzying high. She bit her lip in order to not say anything incriminating and glanced at Blake. His eyes were bright with the power of his animal. "I feel the same." "Did she tell you about us? That we're a pair?" Cain asked, pulling her long hair from inside her cape and gliding his fingers through her tresses. She swallowed back a moan and stopped herself from leaning into his touch. Jesus. She wanted so badly to say something to them, to the effect of, "Get naked and show me what you got," but didn't think that would go over well. "She did." Cain grabbed her hand and placed it flat on his chest. The shifting muscles under his shirt made her palm tingle. "Is this what you want?" "Lord, yes. Definitely times a billion to the power of the hell yes." She glanced up from where her hand lay on his chest and met his gaze. His eyes had also gone bright with his animal. It was so fucking sexy to know they both wanted her. There was no holding back because she was Marcus's sister. These were two incredibly sexual men filled with lust. It was pure animal attraction. She loved it. She lifted her lips in a grin and stared at his mouth. "I might need something to drink." Blake pulled away from her. "I'll get you some champagne." "So, is this what you want?" Cain asked again, his big body looming so close she wanted to rub herself on him with every breath she took. She turned to face him fully, sliding the hand on his chest up to his shoulder. Christ, he had a mountain man's body, big and buff, with enough muscles to make her beg to let her climb him. She licked her lips, and he sucked in a breath. "I don't know. I've never been with two men." She was certainly not opposed to it, especially when it came to Cain and Blake, but she had no idea what the hell being with both entailed, other than probably better sex than she'd ever had. He curled a hand around her neck and pulled her close. "Too late, Little Red. These wolves want you." She smiled at his aggression. This was what she wanted from a man, to show her that she was desirable as she was.
I might need convincing.
There was no time to pat herself on the back over her little quip. All she could do was inhale and watch his head descend to press their lips together. Passion blazed, and an electric shudder raced down her spine at the first brush of his lips over hers. He plunged his tongue into her mouth and owned her, rubbing his mouth over hers like some sinful mating ritual. He pushed her to submit to his touch, to the invisible control he had with a single kiss. She dug her nails into his shoulders, her body pressed tight to his. He slid his big hands down her back until he reached her ass and squeezed her cheeks. The kiss deepened. God, that felt good. His hands on her, his lips on her, felt fucking amazing. He nibbled and sucked on her tongue. Her nipples pebbled tight, aching with the need to be touched under the restraining material of her corset. Lord, she never wanted to be naked like she did at that moment. Heat poured over her in waves, seeping through her pores and warming her to the marrow. Her heartbeats thudded in her ears. No kiss had ever done this to her. It made her lose herself completely in the moment. She pulled away from him, gasping for a breath. You... She cleared her throat, her entire body aching with suppressed tension. Major point. It was pure luck that he decided not to tear the mask off her face and be done with her mystery. He curled his hand around her jaw. You're tempting the beast, Little Red. She blinked. The fire in his eyes made her pussy throb. This was the first time a man, or any man, had looked at her like she was sex on heels. It was really frickin' awesome. She wanted to squeal and throw herself at him. Maybe order him down on his knees and tell him to do her then and there. But what would that say about her? She choked back a snort. That she was damn horny and hadn't had sex in a while is what he'd think. Which was the truth. She'd been so disappointed and angered with the past men in her life, she'd pretty much lived an almost celibate life, except for her awesome, battery-operated friends in her private drawer.
How do you know I'm not a mistake?
She asked. She was realistic. The minute Blake and Kane realized who she was under the mask and costume, they'd treat her like she had the plague again, all because of that stupid friendship code, and the fact that Marcos was so overprotective. His gaze roamed over her again, like a slow, seductive caress. Her temperature spiked from that single, sizzling glance. You're no mistake. I can tell. Even though I can't catch your scent, my animal is pushing me to take you. His rough and rugged voice opened a new door to her need. Men didn't talk to her like that. Ever.
What will you do if I'm not what you truly want?
A slight lift of his lips was the only hint of his smile. She stared at the scruffy jaw and shaggy haircut that made him look like a real-life pirate. Perhaps it was that she had denied herself for too long from seeing Kane and Blake, when they'd both been what she desired secretly for so many years. But being this close to him made her question his real motives. She knew she wasn't mate material. Not for them. They needed a third like them. A shifter. Everyone knew that's how the triads worked. He lowered his head, and she knew he wanted to kiss her again. Lord, how she wanted that. More than she wanted to take off her damp panties. I'll put it to you this way, he breathed, his lips floating over hers. I want to fuck your pretty lips. I want to slide up between your sexy thighs and feel your pussy wet and hot around my cock. And then I want to come inside you, again and again. He rested his lips by her ear. I have been thinking of every way I can get this outfit off you for the past 10 minutes. He sucked her earlobe between his teeth and tugged. "4." A heady thrill rushed her. She bit her lip and moaned, pressing closer to him.
Is my costume not nice enough?
Oh yeah, it's sexy as fuck. From the heels to the garters, up to that top showing off your tits. It's all one tempting little package.
He kissed his way to her lips. Her pulse skipped a beat. She might die just from his hand on her ass, squeezing her cheek.
The skirt hides your delectable ass. The top is hard to move and keeping me from touching your nipples.
She swallowed the sand, clogging her throat. You can get it off. What the hell was she doing? She'd just given him permission to strip her at a party. Blake would return at any moment, and the idea of him finding her and Kane together only pushed her anticipation. Would he join in? She knew they'd share a mate at some point, but did they share women regularly? That was something she wasn't aware of, and by God, she wanted to find out firsthand. Kane glanced down at the zipper on the front of her corset with another of those mind-fucking grins.
You're right.
The zipper hissed as he pulled it down, opening the tight corset at the front and leaving her bare on top. The material fell to the floor with a thump.
This is a beautiful sight,
he said, his words so rough she could barely make them out. He cupped her breasts, lifting the heavy weight in his warm palms and thumbing her aching nipples. She groaned, her heartbeat increasing with the fondling he did.
Do you like me touching you, little red?
She pushed closer into him, arching her back and pressing her chest into his hands. God, yes! He brought his head down closer to her chest and sucked one of her nipples into the warm cavern of his mouth. Her body had a mind of its own at that point. She raised her hands up to his hair and clutched at the strands. Her belly quaked. Multiple shudders ran down her spine, straight to her pussy. She'd become so enthralled in his lips, sucking her nipples, she'd forgotten anyone could walk in on them at any time. The sound of footsteps and laughter came from outside the garden. She tried to force her body to cooperate, but instead, she gripped Kane's hair harder and moaned. So good. He lifted her in his arms and moved a few steps back before setting her down on the swing she'd seen when she'd first walked into the room. She leaned back into the cushion, her skirt hiked up to reveal her itty-bitty panties and thigh-highs.
Christ, is that a garter?
She met his gaze with a grin. His reaction empowered her. The way he groaned the words out and pushed her legs open spoke volumes. The lust so evident in him was something she'd never seen in any man. Like it?
Little red, I fucking love it.
She leaned back in the cushioned swing, watching him as she raised her hands to her chest to tweak her own nipples. This was a new experience, but the look on his face was priceless. She reveled in these new, sexy woman feelings. Kane dropped down to kneel in front of her. He pushed her legs wider.
This has to go,
he said, slicing through the panties with his claws. The soft sound of material tearing filled the quiet garden for a nanosecond. He peeled the see-through panties off her and growled.
That's fucking beautiful.
She licked her lips, squeezing her breasts a little harder than before. Her pussy creamed as she watched his features tighten and his eyes glow brighter. For once, she didn't worry about how soft her belly looked or how thick her legs were. Instead, she focused on embracing the sensuality he brought out in her.
My tongue is going to lap every little drop from your pussy.
He groaned softly, pressing his lips to her leg.
I want your wetness on me. I want to lick my lips and taste you over and over again.
She had a hard time keeping her knees from shaking. Her blood sizzled with arousal. His words were like a magical movie playing in her mind. He swiped his tongue on her thigh. She inhaled sharply and gulped. How do I taste?
I can't scent you, but from how beautiful your pretty pink folds are, I know you're fucking delicious. I want to spend the rest of the night with my face in your pussy, feasting on you." His licks and kisses moved to the center of her need. Her muscles tensed. She waited with bated breath for him to do something, anything. Men didn't really give Danny oral. Not usually. They complained her thighs were too wide, and she tended to squeeze their heads when she got excited. A man who willingly wanted to do that without her having to push his head down was a miracle. This was something that turned her on beyond belief. "Kane," she groaned. He curled his arms around her large thighs and held her in place, draping her legs over his shoulders. Her heels pressed at his back, and he didn't seem to mind. "You in this little outfit will forever be burned in the back of my brain." Good gracious, he knew just what to say. "Why?" "Heels, garters, and thigh-highs have to be some of the sexiest things to see a woman with your body in." She pushed back the urge to groan. "Because I'm big?" "You're not big. You're beautiful. Lush. You have a body made for fucking." She blinked back the visions of him doing just that. "I've never heard that." "It's true." He placed butterfly kisses on one thigh, then the other. "All I can think about right now is keeping your legs wide open and watching my cock slide deep into your wetness. I want to fuck you everywhere." "Looks like you two are having fun without me," came Blake's voice from the doorway. He clicked the door lock behind him and placed glasses filled with champagne on a table by the entrance. She moaned, not caring that he'd caught them in the middle of Kane kissing his way to her pussy. "You look divine laying there," Blake said, prowling closer. Kane didn't stop. He brushed his lips over her clit in a sweep so light she gasped, and then waited for him to do it again. She pinched her nipples harder, wiggling her hips lower to meet Kane's mouth. "Patience," Kane murmured between her thighs. "I can't," she gasped, shutting her eyes and pressing her head back into the cushion of the swing. "You can," Blake said. "Here, let me help you, beautiful." Blake sat next to her on the big swing. He shifted to his side and picked her hands up and placed them on his chest. She watched his beautiful, dark eyes glow with his animal. He brought his lips down over hers, sucking the air out of her lungs. Crawling her hands over his chest, she gripped the material of his shirt and tugged him closer, at the same time Kane licked her folds. Blake swept his tongue into her mouth, probing, taking. She moaned into the kiss and shuddered when Kane flicked his tongue in circles over her clit. She ignored the tiny voice in her head, telling her she shouldn't do this. These were her brother's friends, but she wanted a relationship. Things like this never happened to Danny, so she'd take it and enjoy it. She'd enjoy every second of Kane's mouth on her pussy, sucking and licking like she was a tasty piece of fruit. She'd enjoy Blake's mouth pressing over hers, his fingers molding her breasts and pulling at her nipples. Daniela knew this wouldn't last. It was too good, too perfect to have these two sexual creatures lapping at her body as though she were a gift from the gods. She dug her nails into Blake's chest. Though toned and muscular, Blake had a less bulky frame than big mountain man Kane. Blake's skin felt hot under his torn shirt. He grunted into the kiss, his thumbs pressing at her aching nipples. He moved away from her lips, leaving her to fight her lungs for some air. Passion flooded her veins, with both men caressing her body. Blake encased one of her nipples in his mouth. He grazed his teeth over the swollen mound and sucked hard. Electricity sparked through her, making her shudder. She threw her head back, slid one hand into his short hair, and held him tight to her chest. Christ, that felt good. His mouth on her breast, licking and biting, reduced her ability to think and form a coherent sentence. She gripped Kane's longer, shaggy hair with her other hand and rocked her hips on his lips. It was surreal, the fantasy she'd always had but never thought would come true. Both men wanting, licking, and sucking on her body to bring her to the heights of pleasure. Kane drove his tongue into her channel, fucking her with it, and growling to create a vibration that drove her wild. "Yes, God, yes!" she screamed. Her pussy grasped at Kane's driving tongue. He didn't stop. He licked her, pushing the tension curling in her stomach to form into a tight ball, ready to explode at any moment. Her brain tried to take in the actions of both men, heating her blood to boiling. Kane brushed his tongue up from her ass to her clit in slow, wide licks. She groaned with each swipe of his tongue on her slick flesh. He sucked her throbbing clit between his teeth. "Oh my God! More! More! More!" Both men bit her in tandem. She was glad she was sitting on the swing, since her muscles felt heavy and weak. Kane growled on her pussy, nibbling her clit hard. Blake did the same on her breast, her nipple tight between his teeth. The vibrations rocking her body blew the tension at her core into millions of pieces. She choked on a scream, her body slowly loosening as a tidal wave of pleasure swept her under. She sucked breaths into her deprived lungs, mini rockets shooting from her core, outward to her heavy limbs. Kane continued to kiss her inner thighs, working his way down to her knees. Blake pulled back, pushing some of the sweaty strands of hair away from her face. Her body started to cool after the massive inferno that consumed it moments before. She sat up slowly, fixing her skirt and watching Kane stand. Blake took hold of her mask and tugged. "You won't need this anymore," he murmured, peeling the black half-mask off her face. She screeched and tried to hide her face, only to hear both men gasp. "Fuck!" "Daniela?" Kane asked, standing before her with a scowl fierce enough to scare small children. She looked around for her corset. No way in hell was she having a talk with them while half-naked. She struggled to zip the corset up, knowing that the damn thing needed to be loosened at the back so it could close at the front. Right at that moment, her brain didn't want to think about that. All she wanted was to not be naked, while she discussed with her brother's friends why she just let them give her oral sex, and why she hadn't said a thing about who she was. She growled and pressed the open corset over her naked breasts, holding it up with shaky hands. Hell, of all the times for them to realize who she was, this was not the one she'd envisioned when they'd started earlier. "Hi!" She pressed the material over her body, using it almost like a safety shield. They stared at each other. "What are you doing here?" "Being set up on a date." "You? She set us up with you?" Kane growled. His tone made her frown. Hadn't they just been all over her like they couldn't get enough of her just 30 seconds ago? What happened to that? "Well, what the hell is wrong with me? I thought you just told me I was perfect." Jerk. Figures that he'd say the right words just to get her naked. Or mostly naked. "You are perfect," Blake said. "You're also Marcus's sister." She shrugged. "So?" This whole thing of her being Marcus's little sister annoyed the shit out of her. Weren't these grown men? "Your brother once told us that we needed to keep our hands off you," Kane said, walking to one of the open doors leading to the back and leaning on the frame. "We've been careful to not damage our friendship with him." That rat bastard. "You mean to tell me that you two could want me and will not touch me because of Marcos?" She clenched her jaw so hard she swore her teeth would break at any moment. Kane and Blake glanced back and forth at each other before both frowning at her and answering at the same time. "Yes." Tired of fighting to keep the open corset from revealing her body, She snagged a folded throw off a chair and threw it over her shoulder, allowing the corset to slide off without showing her breasts. She folded the corset and held it in front of her along with the sides of the blanket like a shield. With measured steps, she marched to the door Blake had locked when he'd brought them champagne. "What are you doing?" Blake asked, his voice filled with concern. She stopped, turned, and cleared her throat. "I'm getting out of here. You two have no clue what you want. It's obvious that Mrs. Wilder made a mistake in bringing us together." Damn it. She'd been so close to getting both men naked. The injustice. "Don't go." Blake ran a hand through his short cropped hair. He appeared torn, and she couldn't understand it. It shouldn't be this hard to make a decision about wanting her. They either did or didn't. They weren't bound to Marcos for any reason other than friendship, so why couldn't they be with her if that's what made them happy? "What exactly do you want?" she asked. Blake pinned her with his slowly dimming golden gaze. "When it comes to you, it's not about what we want. It's about what we promised. And we promised Marcos that we would stay away from you." Fucking hell. This is starting to sound like a broken record covered in total bullshit, to be honest, she said, her hand hovering over the knob. "5." Kane inhaled sharply. "Your brother is our friend," he said, his voice so rough she swore he'd shift at any second. "We made a vow to keep our hands to ourselves. You're much too important to your brother for us to damage our friendship with him or your expectations of the future." What expectations? Jesus H. Christ. They made it sound like she was ready to marry them. All she wanted was some hot sex from the two of them. Why was it so hard for them to comprehend that? She glared from one man to the other, frustration and anger growing by leaps and bounds inside her chest. She felt like she was 16 once again, and being rejected over some stupid brotherly friend code. Swallowing back the hurt, she unlocked the door, turning the knob, and walked out of the room, ignoring both men calling out to her. Bypassing one of the hallways she'd been escorted through, she opened up a set of French doors and rushed out into the night. Bright moonlight lit her path as she tried not to fall on her heels on her way to the front of the house. What a mistake it was to have come and done this. Mrs. Wilder wasn't to blame, though. She couldn't have known that there was a history between Danny and the Shifters. Once Danny saw them in their costumes, she should have expected that there was never going to be a chance with Blake and Kane. Her hope had grown with the desire they'd openly shown her, but that hadn't been enough for them to take a chance and ignore whatever they'd promised Marcos. A pair of strong hands grabbed her by her sides, jerking her to a stop as she rounded the corner of the house to turn for the driveway. Her heels sank in the grass, making it almost impossible to stand upright. "Danny," Blake said, turning her to face him. "You can't go. You don't understand what's going on." She rolled her eyes and gripped the blanket harder, holding back the urge to yell at him. "Please, Blake, I don't need explanations. This is the second time you've both made it clear that there is no chance for me with you. There won't be a third time." She tried to tug her arms out of his hold, but he was strong. Kane was nowhere in sight. She wondered if Blake was the one sent to talk to her because he was the peacemaker of their pack, the one who calmed ruffled feathers and reduced anger levels. "No matter how much we don't want to want you, we still do." How could she even begin to explain to him what his words did to her? She'd finally heard the words that she dreamt of come out of his mouth. Maybe she should be checked for hallucinations. Her stomach twisted in all kinds of knots, and a flare of pleasure bloomed over what he said. They really wanted her. Probably not as badly as she wanted to tear at their clothes and hump them, but it was something. Unfortunately, if they worked this hard at fighting it, then maybe she needed to let it go. She didn't think they'd understand how much she'd wanted both of them for so many years.
I can't do this. It is clear that your friendship means more to you guys than a night with me." Her mind played instant erotic images of her with both men. What a night that would be. It was unreal that with a mask on, she'd almost gotten into the fantasy she'd been waiting for. But the minute it'd come off, reality had hit her in the face like a ton of bricks.
"You don't understand,"
Blake growled. He shifted from foot to foot and scrubbed a hand over the back of his neck. Then he growled again. She raised her brows in curiosity. Blake had never lost his temper or shown any signs of frustration. This was new, even for him.
"It wouldn't just be a night. We're looking for a mate. We need someone to help us create the bond necessary for our alpha triad."
She shook her head, shoulders slumping, and glanced away. "I can't help you. I know how this works. You need a shifter, and I'm certainly not one." Reality was, she'd give anything to be part of their triad, but she had her feet firmly planted on this planet. These were powerful, strong beings. She was a human. To create the triad that they needed, they had to find a female that would be able to shift. A woman who was strong and could give them alpha babies. She couldn't give them anything other than herself. The truth was, she should focus on finding a human man who could rock her world. Her first use of the PDA, and things had already gone wrong. Obviously, paranormal dating wasn't for her. "Look, Blake, this is more than what I signed up for."
"I understand. But now that we've been so close to you without knowing it was you, it changed things. Our guards were always up when you were around because of your brother. We realized that we might have to rethink staying away."
She gave a dry laugh and shook her head. "You'll have to keep rethinking it. I'm not just some object you can decide all of a sudden you want. I'm a woman who has feelings. I have a lot to offer the right man. The last thing I want is to hear that I'm not what you really want, but you'll rethink being with me because your dick is thinking for you. That's not how I work." She jerked away from his hold and moved toward the front of the house. It wasn't going to be easy, but she'd get past this. It had been so simple to let herself get caught up in the fantasy that both men wanted to be with her. The reality was that they needed a mate, but she wasn't the one for them. Blake stared in the distance, watching their future mate walk away, and didn't know why he allowed it. Pain drifted off her pores, pushing his wolf to the surface with a growl he had to bite back. It was clear that he had upset her. Not that he'd meant to, but he refused to lie to her. They needed a third, and they had vowed to Marcos that they would not touch his sister. They didn't plan on following Marcos's request any longer. For years they had. They'd been depriving themselves of Daniela and making their triad whole. When Blake and Kane had become friends with the humans, Marcos had made it clear that his sister was off limits. At first they thought it was because he didn't understand shifters, but the truth was that he'd understood them more than they realized. Both Blake and Kane had been respectful of his concern for Daniela, and had tried to abide by the rules of their friendship. They'd stayed away from her. Their interest had been piqued at their first meeting, when she had been nothing but a teenager. But tonight, seeing her without knowing who she was, sent them over the edge. Licking her, touching her, it all brought out feelings and mating desires no other female had. It was more than they were used to, and they didn't know how to respond. On one hand, they had their friendship to think about, but on the other hand, he knew they would not find another to fill the gap in their alpha triad. She was their one, the only one for them.
"So what do we do?"
Kane's voice floated from behind him as he stopped by Blake's side. Blake turned to face his friend. They'd never had this kind of thing happen before.
"I don't know,"
he murmured, for once completely confused and unsure of how to fix things. Though Kane was the alpha leader and the one that everyone looked up to, Blake was the problem solver. Blake knew when pack members were upset.
He spent most of his time calming frustrations, soothing anger, and ensuring the pack thrived in peace.
I want her.
Those words from Kane's mouth sealed the deal. Blake wanted her too, but it wasn't that simple. If they mated with someone like Daniela, who was a human, they were subjecting themselves to having to explain to their people that they were still just as strong with a human being that they would be with a third shifter. She might not take to the change. She might be a human forever. How would their pack handle that?
If we take her, we will have to deal with Marcos, the pack, and proving to her that she's the one for us.
He'd seen the heat in her eyes for them. On that account, they were fine. It wouldn't be hard to get her to accept them sexually.
That shouldn't be a problem,
Kane said, his voice dripping with his alpha authority. He slapped Blake on the shoulder and grinned.
Piece of cake. Do you even know women? They're the most complicated creatures on the planet. Just a single word can take your relationship from being happy to being so miserable that your balls crawl up your ass.
Kane laughed and shook his head.
I don't see Danny as being that type of woman.
Blake snorted. He definitely didn't know women.
I think that in order for us to get Daniela to want to be with us, we will have to work really hard and get her mind on board for the long term. Looked to me like she was ready to let us both get a little closer with her tonight. Yes, she was. But one night does not make a lifetime, and we want her forever.
Blake didn't want to have a sexy and deliciously curvy woman to sleep with for a single night. He wanted her as a partner. In order for that to work, he needed to make sure she knew how special she was to them.
What do you have in mind?
Kane asked, folding his arms over his chest. They ambled to the area they'd left Kane's truck at and continued to discuss Daniela.
You and I are a team,
Blake said, reiterating what they both knew.
We have been since we were born. We know that we are both going to be sharing this woman for the rest of our lives. But in order to make it work, we have to be on point to get her to see that long-term with us is not just a possibility. It's a reality that we can make happen.
They slipped into Kane's truck. He put the key in the ignition, twisted it, and the engine roared to life. Kane turned to glance his way.
I already know that. So what do you suggest? First, I want to go make sure she got home okay. I think she was agitated, and it is still bothering me to think she's upset over us. You know I can't let it go.
Kane nodded and gunned the engine. The truck sped forward through the night as they left the party. They'd only lasted all of a handful of hours in the mansion. It had been enough time to realize they'd been ignoring the one woman that could make them whole.
I think we need to make her days just a little bit better. Show her that two of us caring for her isn't all bad. We have to bring her out of the idea that this is only going to be about sex. It's not?
Kane asked, raising his brows.
No, it is not. It's about commitment, remember? Wait, so no sex?
The alarm in Kane's voice made him chuckle.
Of course there will be sex. In fact, I think we should go give her a preview of how good things can be.
Kane turned to glance at him, a slow smile curving over his lips.
That's got to be one of the best ideas you've ever had. Remember, we want to show her the relationship between three can be just as great, if not better, than two.
Kane nodded.
I think you should visit her at the library and show her the wonders of books.
Books. Right. Blake choked on his laughter, already knowing what Kane had in mind.
Fine, I'll do it. I think I'll take the second round and possibly invite her to come over to my place for dinner and a movie.
That's great. Blake nodded. This was shaping up better than he expected.
What about doing something together? Or do we want to be one-on-one for a while so she doesn't get overwhelmed?
Blake thought about it. Kane made a right turn at the street leading to Danny's house. Luckily, Marcos had messaged them her address when he'd left, so they'd know where to go to check up on her.
Let's go with the flow.
See how she reacts to both of us showing up at her place first."
Kane nodded.
"You will have to talk to Marcos."
Kane gripped the wheel and sighed.
"Marcos is going to be hard. He's been very clear about keeping his sister away from our type of life. I don't know what it is about it that he doesn't agree with, but we'll need for him to know we are serious about Daniela."
Blake thought back to the conversations they'd had with Marcos and remembered that one of the things his friend had always been adamant about was that his sister was not a toy, that she deserved to be loved in a serious relationship. Marcos always discussed his anger over the men Danny dated and how they treated her. He also knew that shifters were highly sexual and therefore were fine with multiple partners. It was clear that he wanted to make sure his friends wouldn't use her for sex. If only things were so simple. He wondered what to do to ensure that Daniela would understand how special she was to him and Kane. There was so little he knew about her. He bet Kane knew very little, too. Keeping a distance from her all these years didn't seem to have helped lessen the desire for the curvy temptress. Now things were going to be a lot different. He had no doubt sex with Daniela would be good after having watched her come earlier. Just the idea had his cock hardening in his pants. Fuck. He wanted to slide inside her and feel her pussy rippling against his dick with every contraction from her orgasm. Kane cleared his throat and smiled at him. "We really need to work hard at making her comfortable with us." They had a bond, one nobody could deny. With that bond came the need to unite with a female who would increase their alpha strength by linking them together as a triad. It wasn't just sex. It was so much more. A bone-deep connection between the three that would flow the moment they mated with her. They'd be like a single entity, stronger than anything, and at the same time, a lot more emotionally bonded than any other couple.
"What will we do if Marcos decides this will be the end of our friendship?"
Blake asked. He hated to think about it, but it could happen. Marcos had been a no-nonsense type of man. If he'd been a shifter, he'd definitely be an alpha. His need to protect Danny had always pushed Blake and Kane away from her.
"I really don't want to think about that,"
Kane grumbled.
"We've been so close for so long, it would be completely devastating to see our friendship destroyed. But I'm not giving up Daniela. She is our missing piece. I want her, and I won't settle for anyone else."
Kane had never been a pushy alpha. He led by quiet example, and unless things turned violent, he let his people do as they wished, always ready to embrace ideas. He'd been the perfect partner through the years. He'd been open to Blake's suggestions in the past. For him to say those words, it was clear that his wolf was ready to mate. Blake's wolf agreed. They both wanted Daniela. To mate. To take. To keep. 6. Daniela floored the gas pedal while growling at her inability to stop thinking about what the men had done to her in the garden. Jesus Christ! How could they have been so good at touching and kissing her? Never mind the licking, the sucking, and, oh goddess of wet panties, the biting. She swore every pleasure point in her body had been rediscovered. Every caress and kiss had brought her to new heights of ecstasy. And they hadn't even moved to the good parts. Thinking about it made her squirm in her seat. Stupid hot shifters. Blake and Kane had moved to a whole new level of evil by turning her on the way they had, only to push her away with their words. Why did they have to have this whole friendship pact anyway? All it meant was that now she'd have a very lonely night with a vibrator. From what she'd experienced with Blake and Kane, her battery-operated boyfriend would never be as good as one or both of those guys. When she got to her house, she threw the corset on a sofa and rushed to her bedroom to remove the annoying costume. She strolled past a full-length mirror and stopped to stare at herself. Holy shit. She looked like she'd been rolling around with two men. Her hair was a long,
tangled mess. Her lips were still swollen, and she had red blotches on her neck from where Blake had rubbed his 5 o'clock shadow on her. A shiver raced down her spine at the memory. She took off the skirt and kicked the heels to the side. They hit her dresser and bounced on the carpet. Her hands hovered over the garter and thigh-highs, ready to remove them when her doorbell rang. Slipping on a short robe, she went to open the door while wondering if it was her neighbor coming to find out how the party had gone. She'd mentioned to Danny she'd stop by if she returned early enough to chat about the masquerade. After a peek through her window, she almost ran back to her bedroom. Her heart pounded in her chest. They were out there. Both of them. What the hell was she supposed to do? The thought of them coming to her home hadn't crossed her mind once since she'd left. Her begging them to finish what they'd started certainly had, but that was another story. She should probably not stand there like an idiot and decide what to do very fast.
"Danny,"
Blake said from the other side of her door.
"We know you're standing behind the door. Let us in."
Ah, hell. These guys are going to be the death of her. At the very least, the reason she'd have to go to therapy soon. She squeaked and jumped away from the door. "Go away," she ordered. "You were very clear with what you said earlier. I'm not into games. What I'd wanted from you two isn't going to happen." There was a moment of silence before Kane replied.
"We are not here to play games, beautiful. We want to talk to you."
Shit. He'd gone and called her beautiful. Not that she hadn't been called that before, but never by them. It somehow felt special to hear it from Kane. She bit her lip and shifted from foot to foot, wondering what to do. Finally, after much debate, she opened the door. Struggling to keep her nerves under control, she moved away, allowing both men to enter her home. First, Kane walked in. His big, sexy body took up most of her living room. Then Blake entered. Their gazes roamed over her body in a swift and heated caress. Her nerves jumped like there was a trampoline competition going on in her stomach. She swore that the room size diminished by at least half. She stared from one to the other, watching as Blake shut her door, closing them both inside with her. She prayed her legs kept her upright, because all of a sudden, her muscles felt weak. "What do you want?" she asked again, her stomach flipping and flopping like she'd just been on the world's craziest roller coaster. Kane moved forward at the same time Blake came around her side. She tried to keep calm as both men's intense gazes closed in on her, but her heartbeat accelerated quickly.
"We came to make sure that you arrived home okay,"
Kane said, his voice a mere growl.
"We were worried about you."
He took another step toward her.
"To be honest, we just couldn't let you go."
She retreated until her back hit the wall. "Well, too bad. I don't want you anymore." They looked at each other, then turned and grinned at her.
"You lie, little one,"
Blake said, grasping her hand and kissing the tips of her fingers.
"Let us show you how good we can be together."
She had to wake up. This had to be a dream. There was no way they'd said what they had and now wanted to get her naked. And they appeared really ready to get her naked quickly. Shh, Kane groaned, looming over her and cupping her neck with his giant hand.
"Don't fight it, Danny."
He gripped the neck of her robe with his other hand and pulled her to him. She gasped as her body came flush to his. God, he was hard all over. And big. So very big and warm. The heat from their bodies enveloped her to the point that she got goosebumps all over. Once she'd taken 2 steps toward Kane, Blake pressed at her body from behind. Talk about being between a rock and hard place.
"You're so beautiful,"
Blake murmured, pushing her hair over her shoulder and brushing his lips over the curve of her neck.
"I want to see you naked."
Oxygen froze in her lungs. She tried to make sense of what was going on, but it was hard. The fact that they were both touching her at the same time seemed to have short-circuited her thinking abilities. Kane tugged on the tie at her waist, opening her robe, and stared down at her body. Only the nylon's end garter remained on her, but those bits of material did nothing to hide her body. "You're gorgeous," he breathed as if he'd run a marathon, his voice rough and rusty. He lowered his head and brushed his lips over hers. The kiss was soft, sweet, and delicate. None of the things Kane had ever shown to be. It was like seeing a new side to him. The big shifter could be more than what met the eye. Blake pulled on the robe until it swooshed down to the floor, pooling at her feet. He slid his hand down her spine slowly, lighting fires along the way, until he reached her ass and squeezed at her bare cheeks. "This is what I like," Blake groaned. "This is what we need. Your body is lush, sexy," he mumbled, kissing up to the back of her ear. She could do nothing but push her ass back into his erection. At the same time, Kane moved forward, rubbing his arousal over her belly. She'd never been so turned on in her life. Blake moved a hand around her waist, cupping her mound and sliding his fingers between her slick lips. "Christ," he groaned. "You're fucking wet. I can't wait to lick your pussy." She loved how he said it. So raw, so sexy, like he was ready to fall to his knees for a taste of her. Kane continued to kiss her slowly. He pulled his lips away from hers and pinned her with his heated stare. "Tell us you want this." He cupped her breasts and squeezed. Her nipples ached and pleasure shot down to her clit in an electrifying charge. "Tell us you need us as much as we need you." She nodded, unable to say anything else. The words died in her throat, along with her ability to speak. This was it. Years of fantasizing had come to a reality she still couldn't believe. This was what she'd always wanted. She moaned at Blake's slight strokes on her clit. He thrust at her ass, letting her feel how hard he was. The two men she had almost daily fantasies about for years wanted her body. Her big boobs, big ass, and big thighs. Thank God. She'd always been honest with herself. She knew she was a big girl. She had curves and rolls, and she was more than okay with that. To her coworkers' dismay, she actually liked her body. She felt at ease with her shape. A lot of people didn't understand how much she loved herself and her figure. She learned that while others lived in a world of desperate need to change themselves, or those around them, she happened to want to stay as she was. Curvy, big, or whatever they wanted to call her. She was Danny no matter her shape or size. Anyone who loved her would love her how she came. "God, beautiful," Kane groaned. "I can't wait to slide deep inside you." Kane brought his lips down to her chest, pulling a nipple into the wet suction of his mouth. She moaned, arching her back to press the aching bud deeper into his face. Fucking hell, that felt good. He swirled his tongue around her nipple, at the same time he tweaked at her other one with his thumb and forefinger. "Oh, God, yes!" Blake pressed at the center of her need. Her clit throbbed as if ready to burst into flames. "That's it. Rub your ass on my cock. Soon you'll be rubbing it on my face." She jumped as bone-deep shudders racked her core. "Please," she moaned. God. She kept herself upright by some miracle force of nature, digging her nails into Kane's gigantic shoulders. She'd been able to use him to cling to. Kane released her nipple after a final bite, which sent moisture dripping down her thighs. He led her to a reclining chair and motioned for her to sit. She did. "Spread your legs for me," Blake said, showing her his sinful grin. "Let me see how wet you are." Kane stood in front of her. "Show us." She leaned back on the chair, her back rubbing against the leather and warming it with her body heat. Then she splayed her legs open, placing them over the armrests and giving them a front row view of her wetness.
"Fuck her pussy with your tongue," Kane told Blake. "I want to see her lips wrapped around my cock."
How in the hell had she gotten into this? Oh, who cared? This was Blake and Kane, both of them licking their lips and gazing at her as if she was a feast and they were starving. It was surreal and amazing at the same time. Blake dropped to his knees in front of her seat, immediately lowering his head between her legs. He curled his arms around her large thighs and kissed his way to her pussy. Once again, she could have been self-conscious over being a big girl in a non-flattering position, but it was hard to care about that when all she could think about was reaching the highest orgasmic peak, right now. There was no place for insecurity. Not that she had any. She knew she might not be what society considered sexy, but screw it. She definitely felt sexy. She turned to face Kane. He'd stripped out of his clothes while she'd watched Blake ratchet up the tension in her body. Kane naked was a work of art. Big, with large muscles and no body fat, he had a body any woman would worship day or night. She swept her gaze down his beautiful torso to his erection. He was hard and wet. Beads of moisture dripped from the head of his cock, which he used to jerk himself and lubricate his length. Her gaze ran back up to his face.
"Suck my dick,"
Kane ordered, his voice pure churned gravel.
"I want to feel you sucking me off."
She licked her lips, lifted her hand to push his away, and wrapped it around his cock. "Come closer. I want you sliding down my throat." He groaned and pushed closer, his cock level with her lips. Need shook her to the core. She never wanted something as badly as these two men taking her, owning her. She opened her lips wide, sliding his smooth length into her, furiously flicking her tongue side to side the further he went.
"Ah, Daniela, that mouth of yours is magic,"
Kane groaned. She loved how he said it, so slow and sexy with a hint of desperation, almost like he couldn't get enough and would stoop to begging soon. He slid his fingers into her hair, pulling the long strands away from her face. She slowly pumped his shaft and bobbed back and forth, leaving a wet trail of saliva coating him. Her mind switched gears from his moans of encouragement to focus on Blake's tongue swiping up and down her pussy. She took a long lick and then drove his finger into her, rumbling against her clit. She couldn't hold it. Her body gave, and the tension inside her unraveled at light speed. She pulled Kane out of her mouth and groaned as she continued to jerk him with her hand. Her pussy grasped at Blake's fingers, but a second later he was gone. They changed positions on her. Kane pulled her ass up off the seat and drove into her in one swift drive. "Oh, dear God!" He groaned.
"Fucking hell, that feels amazing."
Blake came around, lowering his head to suck on her tits. Kane fucked her hard, raw, without stopping. His grunts and groans made her wetter and hotter than anything else. Then there was Blake, licking and biting on her nipples. Her sanity flew out the window with how good it felt to have Kane inside her. He plunged into her in quick, hard drives, each one deeper, harder than the last. Her mind muddled, and her breaths turned into short rasps. She clawed at the chair, trying to reach for the cliff her body pushed her toward.
"Fuck, Little Red, you're wet and tight, so slick and hot," Kane snarled. "Watching my dick come out drenched in your wetness is so goddamned sexy."
Blake bit down on one nipple, then moved to the other. He slid a hand down between her legs to tap at her exposed clit.
"Ah, yes,"
Kane muttered.
"Squeeze my dick, baby."
Kane, God, Kane, fuck me harder. Please, just a little longer. She moaned.
Anything you want, beautiful,
he said, plunging into her, leaving her breathless. Her pelvic muscles contracted. Blake tapped her clit again, biting her nipple harder, and she flew. Her back arched, her pussy clasped around Kane's cock, and she screamed. Blake pulled back, jerked himself over her breasts, and spurted his cum over her chest. Kane thrust deep, his dick pulsing inside her, filling her with his seed.
You look so sexy, with his cum on your chest and mine seeping out of your pussy,
Kane said.
Let's take you to bed and continue this there.
Blake grinned. She was still catching her breath. All she could do was nod and hope they helped her there. Her legs weren't working yet. None of her muscles were. Blake lifted her into his arms and grinned.
Come on, curvy goddess. It's my turn to fuck you next.
Seven. The next morning, she woke up alone in her bed, with no one in her home. She wasn't sure if she should be worried that they had gone without saying a word, or if she should be hurt. Neither man had made an effort to stay for the morning after. Wow. She couldn't believe that Blake and Kane would do that. It wasn't like them. Not after all the things they had done the night before, and then they left without a word. It was pretty disappointing. She got out of bed with a heavy sigh. Her muscles ached, a reminder of the sex-filled night they'd had. Not that she was upset over the pain. She loved every single sore muscle. A slow smile crept over her lips. The guys really knew what they were doing when it came to making a woman feel like the center of attention and special. Too bad it had only been one night. But now it was time to go back to reality and back to her day job. A nice, long, warm shower helped her rethink her love life. Tom wanted something deeper with her, but she'd pushed him away because she only saw him as a friend. Ideally, her record-breaking night of sex with Blake and Kane would have been a wonderful way to start a new relationship. She knew that neither man wanted to test the waters and possibly put their friendship with Marcos on the line, so she brushed it off as a one-night stand. It was sad that she would probably lose her only chance with both men because of their unbending will to break any of the friendship rules with her brother. After checking on her brother's dogs and maneuvering it so that the biggest one didn't pin her to the floor and lick her for a good 5 minutes, she headed in to work. When she arrived at the library, her coworkers had gathered around her desk, watching her with interest. "What's going on?" she asked. "Nothing," her boss replied, her voice holding a hint of anger. "Seems like you have an admirer." She walked into her office. There sat a gigantic mixed flower arrangement in a crystal vase so large it took up her entire desk. The flowers had been chosen in her favorite colors of pink and purple. She dashed forward to grab the card on the bouquet, hoping against hope. Realistically, she expected that they were from the only man that ever sent her flowers, which was her brother. Her fingers shook as she tore open the envelope to glance at the tiny card inside. "This is only the beginning," the note said. It was signed from Kane and Blake. Her heart did a quick flip, and butterflies took flight in her chest. A new wave of excitement flooded her system. They hadn't forgotten her. More than that, it sounded like they didn't want things to end with just one night. From the note, she was sure that they were ready for more. Maybe they were not so worried about the friendship with Marcos getting in the way. "Who's it from?" her nosy boss asked, her voice pure acid. She cleared her throat, shoved the card in her pocket, and smiled. "My brother." Privacy was important to her. She cherished her personal life and didn't need anyone poking around, trying to figure out what she did during her free time or who she was dating. As it was, Tom had shown up a few times to offer to take her to lunch, and they were already under the impression that he was her boyfriend. Denying it only made her look like she had something to hide, so she didn't. Her boss and coworkers had enough to say about her weight without her telling them that she might be seeing 2 men at the same time. All hell would break loose. It was difficult to work with judgmental people. Not that she cared about their opinions in the least, but she had to work with them, and it could make her job, something she loved to do, very difficult. Everyone moved away from her desk, as if nothing had happened. She knew that things were going to be different, even if it was only for a little while. Now it was only a matter of time to see how they could make things work in a relationship of 3, at least until her 2 wolves found their 3rd. Her phone rang, and a glance at the screen showed her brother's face. "Hi, Marcos. How are you?"
"I'm great. How are the pups?"
he asked, his voice coming in and out as if going through a massive static storm. Reception was bad, so she knew that he was likely out of range, and calling the moment he'd gotten a couple of bars. "They're good," she sighed. "I checked on them this morning, and I went over there yesterday afternoon like I told you I would." He loved to question everything. He'd been gone for all of a handful of days, and she knew he was thinking she hadn't been minding the dogs.
"You could have stayed over at my place if you'd wanted to."
His words sounded like an accusation. Yep, he really thought she didn't know how to care for his pups, something she did every single year. "No, I'm okay." She ground her teeth until her jaw ached. "I prefer to stay in my own place, and your puppies like to run around a lot." Puppies. Huh. More like evil dogs from hell. She'd been tackled to the ground yet again. Usually, she had better luck keeping them at bay. This time, they'd made it their mission to get her on the ground and keep her there like a chew toy.
"They have a doggy door, you know,"
he said, in that you-don't-know-what-you're-doing tone of voice that made her want to scream.
"They come and go as they please. All you have to do is feed them and make sure that they're okay."
There was a short pause, and then he added,
"If that's too much for you, I can ask someone else to do it."
"Marcos, shut up. I know what I have to do. You don't have to remind me. You act like I'm a little kid," she snapped.
"What's your problem? I never said you were a little kid. I just wanted to make sure that you can handle the dogs."
Right. The dogs. He's so worried about the dogs, but he was the reason Blake and Kane had never gotten more than 10 feet near her. She narrowed her eyes and glared at her computer screen, her anger rising by the second. "You know, you can be a real jerk. It's a wonder why I care so much about you."
"Maybe because we only have each other,"
he said, as if that explained everything in the world.
"Have you seen Blake and Kane? I asked them to keep an eye on you while I was gone."
Oh, she'd seen them all right. She'd seen a whole lot more than what he probably expected her to. It was funny how for so many years she'd wanted so badly to be between both men, and now that she had been, she wanted nothing more than to be there again. Every single minute of the day felt like a hardship, thinking of them being so far away, but having to work cataloging books. Yes, they came by. There was a heartbeat of silence before Marcos spoke. The static got louder on the line.
"They just came by?"
What the heck was she supposed to say? They came by and did amazing things to my body that no man has ever done before? Yes, they came by and checked on me. Then they left. What do you want to hear? I didn't invite them to stay the night, if that's what you're worried about. Marcos swore.
"I hope you were nice to them. They're only doing what I asked."
She choked back a snort, took off her glasses, and started cleaning them of dust. She highly doubted any of what they had done had been her brother's request. "I was very nice. You can ask them yourself." She didn't think for a second that they would admit to Marcos what had happened the night before between the 3. A night like that was best left to be relived in the most sacred places for fond memories of the past.
"They should be coming by again often to check on you."
Hallelujah. That is exactly what she wanted to happen. Maybe not in the same way her brother did, but as long as Blake and Kane came back over again and again to show her how much they wanted her, in every way possible, she couldn't care less how long it lasted. Look, don't worry. I'm pretty sure that everything will be fine. Besides, I've known them all my life too, you know.
All right. If you have any problems or questions about anything, whether it's with the dogs or any issues at the house, just let them know and they'll take care of it for you until I get home. I've got to go, but hopefully in the next few days, I'll be able to find reception again and I'll give you another call.
And if life cared even a little bit about her, he would not find reception. She wanted to go get her freak on with 2 furry guys again without his knowledge. Have fun, Marcos, she said cheerfully. Forget about me and the dogs. Please, Lord, let him forget her. We'll be here when you come home. She hung up the call feeling like she was in a better position now, ready to engage in a sexual relationship with them. Was that wrong? Should she feel maybe a little bad about doing her brother's friends? Nah, you only live once and all that crap. The phone buzzed again with a new text message. I'm hoping that you had a good time at the party last night. When you have a moment, please give me a call or come by and see me. There are some things I need to discuss with you. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the men I set you up with need a person to complete their alpha triad. I need to give you information for your future. How sweet. Jerry actually thought that Danielle had a chance at becoming Blake and Kane's mate. She sent a short reply back, telling Jerry she was aware and knew exactly what needed to happen. In fact, she was more than aware. It would be hard to let go of the men, but she would do it because it was what was right for them. Her boss and coworkers decided to go out for lunch to celebrate one of their birthdays. Daniela was too wrapped up in her previous night and decided to stay behind. Her body still hummed with electric charges from her time at the mercy of Kane and Blake. Besides, lunchtime at the library meant absolute quiet, and she could think more about their next encounter. Okay, she could fantasize. There were 2 single older gentlemen in the library, her usual newspaper readers, sitting at the front by the entrance. She fixed her glasses over the bridge of her nose and combed a hand through her hair. She just left it loose and could only have it that way while her bitchy boss was gone. Her phone buzzed again. It was Blake. She almost hyperventilated when she saw his name pop up on her screen. She'd logged his and Kane's numbers in from the message Marcos had emailed her in his desperate need to ensure she had backup for his pups. Crap. What if they'd changed their mind and decided they were skipping any time with her and going to find their mate? Screw it. She'd blackmail them if she had to. They were not going to give her fantasies and leave her wanting more. No way in hell. She opened the text message and grinned when she read it. You're the sexiest librarian ever. Are you wearing a skirt? She pushed her glasses above her head and glanced around the massive library in hopes of seeing him. She giggled quietly, feeling completely naughty reading his text. I sure am. She was so bad. It took a moment before another message came through. Lift your skirt up. Her eyes stayed stuck on the screen, and the second part popped up. Nobody can see under your desk. I want you to touch yourself. Was he there? She did another sweep of the room with her gaze, but there was no one out of the ordinary that she could see. Should she do it? Well, it wasn't like there were any cameras. Plus, there was that whole you only live once deal she'd decided on. Of course, getting kicked out of the library for indecent exposure wasn't her idea of fun. There were still people coming and going. Her heart pounded double time in her chest. Her coworkers could catch her at any moment. The thrill of doing something she wasn't supposed to had her giddy with excitement. She lifted her short blue skirt up to her hips, bunching it there.
Then she slowly stroked over her panties and bit back a moan. Ah, that felt good. So bad and good at the same time. Her nipples ached. She wanted so badly to reach up and squeeze her tits. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Push the panties to the side and feel yourself. Slide your fingers over your pussy lips and rub a little circle over your clit. Show me you like it. Oh, mother of all things naughty, she was in trouble. Her body heated instantly. There wasn't much she could do but follow his instructions. Was it a bad idea? Absolutely. But this was a fantasy, one of the many she wanted to make real. She did what he asked her to, stroking her pussy, feeling the wetness from her center drip to drench her panties. Her nipples rubbed against the normally soft cotton of her bra. Right at that moment, it felt rough and painful, a new sensation to heighten her desire. Nerves and need turned her muscles tense. Blake sent another text. She bit her lip, swallowing back the whimpers riding her throat. I love the look on your face when you're touching yourself. Are you thinking of us? Wishing it was one of us touching you? Lord, yes. She lifted a trembling hand from gripping her desk and replied a simple yes. Her other hand was busy between her legs. Another buzz from Blake. Tap at your clit for me. I bet it'll feel so good. She read the message and slapped 2 fingers on her clit under her desk. She jerked in her seat, still holding onto her desk with her other hand. The light tap set her body on fire. A soft gasp escaped her throat. At that point, all she could do was stare, ensuring no one watched. Another message. Keep doing that, beautiful. Your face is flushed, and you look gorgeous. I can't wait to fuck your pussy. I bet you're so wet. Wet and ready to be fucked hard, aren't you? One of the old men stood to go, and she stopped, the air pumping hard in and out of her lungs. What the hell was she doing? This was the kind of stuff that would get someone fired. She didn't care. She couldn't care. Her mind was too far gone. All she could think about was that Blake was in the library watching her, and that thought alone drove her crazy. It pushed her to do something she'd never done before, like what she was doing at that moment. She sucked in harsh breaths, trying to stop herself from moaning and groaning as she dipped 2 digits into her pussy and it squeezed around them. She wasn't wet. She was soaked. A new message came through. One more person gone. Don't worry, beautiful. Very soon. Very soon what? If she didn't come soon, she might scream. She stopped touching herself when she noticed the second older man stand. Holy crap! He was coming her way. She tried to appear composed as the man neared her desk. I'm going to the bakery, miss. Would you like me to get you something? He asked. He was a regular, always coming to read the paper. Shaking her head slightly, she smiled. Thank you, but no, I'm fine. All right, I'll be back in a little while. He grinned, his face wrinkling as he did. He tipped his hat and turned around, heading for the door. She wasn't 100% sure there was no one else around. People sometimes sat down between the aisles to read books or browse a particular section. She didn't get a chance to think about that too long before a new message came in from Blake. Wild animal section. Now. Eight. She wasn't sure what was there. Hot shudders shot down her spine. Her palms tingled with sweat and exhilaration. She jumped to her feet and made her way to the back of the library where the section devoted to books on wild animals and their habitats had been created. It was several corridors away from the main section, but had been popular from the very beginning. When she neared the last corner, her heart pounded hard in her ears to the tune of 1,000 drums. What she'd find there, she didn't know.
One thing was for sure. She needed to keep the game going. Blake and Kane had uncovered something new, something different inside her. They'd given her hope that there were men who could want a woman just as she was, with the body she had. That they could go crazy for her, and that there was no need for her to change and turn into a different woman altogether. At her final turn, a hand shot out and grabbed her. She squeaked for a second or two. Then his lips crashed over hers, and at the same time, he pushed her against the wall, pressing his hard body over hers. She moaned, her need to have him inside her renewed and burned with an intensity she hadn't ever felt before. His hands were all over, pulling her skirt up, taking her panties aside, and dipping into her wet heat. He groaned. He spread his fingers between her pussy lips, rubbing up and down her cleft, and then fucking her so slowly she almost passed out from lack of oxygen. He swept his tongue into her mouth, gliding it over hers in bold, sensual strokes. She didn't know what to do, other than grip his hair and wiggle her hips on his hand. Dear God, if this was a dream, she did not want to wake up. Blake fingered her pussy like a fucking pro, sliding deep into her. He went in and pulled out repeatedly until she was squirming. She clung to him, clawing at his shirt and gasping for breath. She needed him inside her or she'd die. Her body worked on autopilot. She released her material-tearing hold of his shirt and moved her hands down to his jeans, unzipping and immediately stroking him. With one hand back up on his shoulder, she held on. Then she pulled his hard cock out. He groaned deeper, the sound animalistic and fucking sexy as hell. She curled a leg around his waist, rubbing herself on him like a cat in heat. Their lips never parted as he slid into her in a single, quick, harsh thrust. All she could think of was how amazingly perfect he felt. When he withdrew and pushed back in, her whole world turned upside down. Colors and thoughts jumbled in her mind. There wasn't a way to keep anything straight. All she could do was breathe and hold on. Her back slammed hard against the concrete wall. Luckily for her, this wall was by the door, and there were no book files near it, or they'd have been in deep shit with how hard her back was hitting that wall. He thrust in and out of her quickly, repeatedly, and with an aggression that made even more moisture drip from her slit. He grunted, his lips still stuck on hers. He delved his tongue into her mouth, rubbing it on hers. Her body fevered to a boil. Her skin felt tight, and her nipples swelled to hard, aching little points. What she'd give for him to bite them while he fucked her. She tore her lips away from his, gasping for air, looking for a way to make her lungs work just a little harder. The pleasure mounted inside her into a ball of tension she knew would soon explode. He thrust in and she bit back a moan. Another drive, and she scored her nails on his neck, leaving long, red lines on his pale skin. She met his gaze. The gold in his eyes only increased her pleasure. "You're so fucking hot," he whispered, his voice a growl. "I've never fucked in a library, but with a sexy librarian like you, I couldn't help myself." He grabbed her legs, lifting her completely off the floor, urging her to curl them around his waist. He held her up by her cheeks and squeezed her large ass. "Please," she breathed on a soft moan, trying to keep herself from saying anything in case anyone heard them. "Fuck, baby, you're so slick and hot." He pounded her even harder. "Oh." "That's it, little librarian. Take my cock." He bit through gritted teeth. "Take all of it. God, your hot little pussy feels fucking perfect, sucking and squeezing my dick." Oh, dear God. She was going to die before she came. It wasn't fair. "Blake," she mumbled. "Please." "Please what, beautiful?" he asked, his lips twisting into a flirty grin. "Please keep fucking you here, where anyone can catch us,
or please make your hot little cunt milk my cock of my cum." She let out a breathy groan.
"Please help me come. I can't take this much longer."
"I can. Your pussy feels so good, so wet, so fucking perfect. I can't wait for you to come around my dick."
He squeezed her ass cheeks, tilting her hips so that he could reach even deeper.
"Come, little librarian."
He lowered his head to brush his lips over hers.
"Wet my dick with your pussy. You know you want to come."
He placed kisses over the curve of her neck and jaw, grazing his lips over her like a gentle caress.
"Come,"
he whispered in her ear.
"Let go."
Her body listened to his words as if he were some sort of magician. Just as he told her to, she felt the tension start to unravel inside her. She gasped, rubbing her cheek on his much scruffier one, and groaned. So close. She was so close, and still too far. Then he did something he hadn't done. He plunged into her at an angle. Her body broke. The tension inside her shattered into a million pieces. She fought for air, clutching and gripping at his hair. He kissed her hard, drinking in the scream that left her lips without her consent. And then he tensed. His thrust slowed until he held stiff inside her while he came, filling her with his seed. There wasn't time for her to catch her bearings. She was still trying to get her legs to function when he put her back down on her feet.
"Baby, someone's coming. You need to go back to your desk."
He held her steady, giving her legs a chance to work while he fixed both of their clothing. For a second, he rained kisses over her face. She leaned into him, holding him in a hug and not wanting the moment to end. He caressed his hands up her back to her front to cup her breasts and rub his thumbs over her nipples. Even covered, she moaned from how sensitive they were to the touch.
"And you are supposed to be the innocent librarian with glasses and dresses."
He chuckled and pressed a kiss to her forehead.
"God, you're so fucking hot. Definitely not innocent."
She swallowed hard and licked her lips, testing her feet and taking a step away from him. "I've never said I was an innocent anything." He shook his head and helped her back to her desk. She just sat down when her boss and coworkers decided to make their entrance, so she jumped back to her feet to stand next to him. He made a final grab for her ass before walking away while thanking her for her help. He didn't say anything else to anyone, and instead chose that moment to glance at her a final time, wink, and leave. Her boss stared behind him and then turned back to her, an ugly frown covering her features. "Let's have a meeting on the upcoming book drive, and then you can take your lunch hour, Daniela." Christ, she wouldn't be able to change out of the soaked panties yet. If she didn't know any better, she'd swear she dreamt up what he'd just done to her. Much to her discomfort, she had the evidence between her legs to show that Blake was the dirty Omega. She couldn't wait to do it all over again with him, Kane, or possibly both. The rest of her day went by in a blur. It was hard for her to get any work done after that. It was a good thing that nobody seemed to notice her lack of concentration. Those that did probably thought that she was thinking about Aurelis and her baked goods. Kane and Blake had officially taken over as being much better than anything baked. That night, she got a message on her cell phone from Kane, asking to see her the following day. He said he wanted to spend some time with her, and he hoped she was open to dinner and a movie at his place. There was no hesitation to her response. How could she say anything but yes, when what she needed was to spend time with him? She wondered if this would last long enough for her to get both men out of her system. She didn't think so. With every moment that she spent with them, and every thought that filled her mind about them, she fell just a little bit more into an abyss of emotions for both. It would take a lot more than hot sex to get them past the hurdle of their alpha triad third. For now, she could dream, because one day she would have to say goodbye, and when that day came, they would have to go and look for the real woman who could complete their triad. She was about to go to bed when she got a phone call from Tom.
"How are you?"
he asked, his voice a lot more chipper than she felt at the moment. "I'm fine," she said indecisively. She had never wanted to hurt Tom's feelings. He needed to know once again that there was no future for them other than friendship. His last voice message to her had worried her, and she knew she'd have to repeat the same words to him.
"I would have called you earlier, but I was at a teacher conference out of town, and it was difficult,"
he apologized. "Tom, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal." She sighed, staring at the ceiling in her bedroom. She'd commissioned someone to paint stars to help her relax and fall asleep. She wasn't anywhere near relaxed.
"Have you given any thought to my proposal?"
he asked with enthusiasm. Shit. He really didn't get the picture, even though she declined before. Her stomach twisted into knots. She hated this part. "I'm sorry, Tom. I told you already I can only be your friend. There's too much going on in my life right now, and I don't see us going any further than friendship," she said gently, hoping not to hurt his feelings. There was a quiet moment, and then he replied,
"You should think about it. We get along so well, and I know that in time you would come to care for me."
"I already care for you, but you have to understand that I don't love you. I need to love whoever I marry. It would not be fair for me or you for us to get engaged when I don't have those feelings." She blinked up at the fake stars, wishing they could help her get through this conversation. "I've told you time and again, I love you as a friend. You are a really nice man and a wonderful teacher." She swallowed hard, fidgeting with one of her frizzy curls. She hadn't bothered straightening her hair that morning, and now the curls had grown a life of their own. "But the chemistry needed for us to have the relationship I want in my future is not there." She bit her lip and winced. "I really hope that you find the right woman for you, because you're an amazing man."
"Danny, I know that in time things could change."
He sounded so hopeful, it pained her to disagree with him. If she felt even a little bit of the sexual attraction she had for Kane and Blake, she would have considered it a long time ago. She didn't. What she felt was friendship and a little bit of pity for Tom. "Things won't change. I'm really sorry, Tom. I am here as your friend for however long you want me, but anything else is out of the question." She felt like an absolute jerk, turning away such a wonderful guy, but she refused to accept less than what she wanted. And she wanted chemistry. She wanted love. She wanted much more than being with a man because they were good friends. Tom was a nice guy. However, she was done with settling for anything. He did not make her crazy with lust like Blake and Kane did.
"Maybe if we went out a couple of times,"
he insisted. "No," she refused emphatically. "Going out on any kind of date is not going to make me change my mind. We are not compatible in that sense. And while I know you don't understand, you've got to accept my words."
"I just don't think you're giving this a chance. We are so good together."
Good together? What in the world was he talking about? She sighed, rubbing a hand over her temple. "Tom, we are not good. We are friends. From a distance at that. You've never even hugged me. How could you know that a relationship that involves sex would be any good for us?"
"Sex is overrated,"
he said quickly. Overrated her ass. Not the kind of sex Kane and Blake had given her. This was starting to piss her off. "Look, Tom, sex might be overrated for you, but I want someone to rock my world. I want a man to want me. I want to be licked all over, and I really, really want to scream his name at the heat of my passion. Do you understand?" Silence reigned over the line. "If you can't give me that, there's nothing else for us to talk about." Tom sighed loudly through the phone line.
"I thought you were different."
"I don't know what you expected from me. I'm just a woman with needs and wants." Right then, her wants and needs were much more important than accepting a friendship-based marriage that would be dull and in which she would end up sexually frustrated and buying sex toys by the bulk.
"I'm sorry I bothered you with my proposal."
He sounded upset now. There was a high pitch and quiver to his voice. If she didn't know better, she'd swear he was crying.
"Tom, don't do this. You're my friend, and I care about you. I would never want to hurt you, but you need to understand, you and I would never work out."
Her words fell on deaf ears.
"Good night, Daniela."
"Good night, Tom."
With a heavy heart, she set her phone down. She hadn't meant to upset Tom or to be mean to him, but she just could not lie to herself or him. For so many years, she'd lived in bursts of relationships where she'd give in to others' suggestions and end up unhappy. Then she'd find herself with a man who wanted her to change who she was to fit what he wanted, and that was just not going to happen anymore. She needed a man who wanted her as she was, with her quirks, with her purple hair, and with her love for books. She needed a man that would want her body like no other woman existed in the world. But more than that, she wanted to feel cherished and loved because of who she was.
"9. The following morning, Kane came by her office looking absolutely delicious. With his scruffy hair and days-old beard, she wanted to do nothing but whimper at the sight of him. Her boss rushed out of her office when he came to the desk.
"Can I help you?" Marla asked with a flirtatious smile.
"I'm here for Daniela."
He smiled. The moment the words came out of his mouth, her boss turned around with wide eyes and stared at her. The look she gave her was a combination of confusion and disbelief. "Marla, Kane is a family friend," she said, trying to pacify her boss and at the same time keep the privacy of their relationship to herself. Marla's brows rose with interest. She made it seem like Daniela couldn't have someone like Kane as a friend. After a heartbeat, Marla excused herself and turned around, flipping her long red hair over her shoulder. She headed back to the office, probably to tell the others all about the unusual visit Danny had at the front.
"Hi."
She smiled at Kane. She went around the front desk and stopped next to him. Her first instinct was to throw herself in his arms and give him a kiss on his sexy smirk, but she held back. It took every ounce of willpower, but she did it.
"Hello, little librarian,"
he said, in that deep voice that made her toes curl in her comfortable walking shoes.
"You're a contradiction."
She frowned, wondering why he'd said that. "I don't think I am." He turned away from the prying eyes at their back and took a few steps to the library entrance. He offered her a hand, but she knew if she took it, there would be hell to pay later with the amount of questioning she'd be subjected to. She shook her head and started walking. She really needed a better job, but she loved the library. She loved books. Hell, she even loved the old people that came and sat there day in and day out to read the newspaper for free.
"Why would you say that?"
she asked.
"Because you are. You wear your beautiful long hair with purple streaks. Your outfits can be daring on some days, but not on others. You're a little angel with long skirts, comfortable shoes, and glasses to hide your eyes behind. It never ceases to amaze me how many sides you have."
She wasn't sure if he was complimenting or insulting her, so she asked, "Is that supposed to be a compliment?"
"Yes, it's a compliment. I know that you are never going to be boring, because there's that wild, sexy side of you. But there's also the quiet, super intelligent librarian that can be so fucking hot,"
he said, his eyes going liquid gold. Thank God he whispered the words, or she might have died on the spot. For him to say her being a librarian was fucking hot was not something she heard every day. Okay, not something she heard ever.
"Kane, you are out of your mind. How is being a librarian sexy?"
He grinned, bringing his head down to just inches away from her. his eyes bright with the wild animal inside him.
Well, you being a librarian is sexy. Maybe not anyone else. Nobody does it the way you do. With your soft brown eyes looking deep into my soul, those sexy lips asking me for a kiss. Not to mention those delectable curves hidden under all those clothes. You and I both know that you have a body made for loving, and I want to taste you all over, sweep my tongue over your body like a blanket. Then I want to lick right between your legs. I want to see your wet, pink folds. I want to see your body shake. I want to hear your moans and groans.
She blinked, her pussy aching from how turned on she was. Kane, stop.
I want to hear you beg for more. I want to make you scream my name, grip my hair. Then I want to fuck you until there are no words that can come out of your mouth, until all you can do is hold onto the bed while I pound deep into you.
He lowered to bring his head even closer to her ear.
Then I want to come in your hot little pussy.
She stood there, unable to say a word. All she could do was listen intently as he went on and on about the things he wanted to do to her. Holy fuck. Was it wrong that she wanted him then and there? She really hoped not, because the reality was that her mind was focused on the two men driving her crazy. The front door opened, and a group of kids brushed past them, breaking the spell. She'd almost melted to the floor, and might have needed CPR if they hadn't been interrupted.
Will you come to dinner at my place?
He asked, lifting her hand to his lips and brushing a light kiss on her wrist. Like there was any doubt. She should say no if she knew what was good for her, but she wouldn't. It was hard to resist wanting them, even though she knew she shouldn't. She wanted Blake and Kane more than her next breath. All those years of waiting were nothing compared to being with them. I'll come, but I need you to understand that I know very well where I stand. His brows curved downward.
What do you mean?
What I mean is that you and Blake need a third, and you need one soon. I know this can't last. I am not a shifter, and there's no guarantee that I ever will be. So yes, I will take what time I can with you guys tonight, but that doesn't change what you must do to keep your pack. I could not live with myself if you guys lost your people because of me. He shook his head.
We will never lose our people. They are faithful to us. I'm sure you are just confused. We can choose whoever we want for a mate, and you need to understand that.
What I know is you need someone strong, and a shifter is the best. He coughed and rubbed a hand over the back of his neck.
Will you come, yes or no?
Yes, I said I would, but don't think for a second that I will forget this conversation. We both know where we stand. He took a step toward her. She held her breath, hoping that he wouldn't do what she could see in his eyes he wanted to do. He wanted to kiss her right then and there, and as much as she wanted him to, it would only give her coworkers a way to get into her personal life. He stopped before he touched her, curling his hands into fists and bringing them to his side.
You'll learn soon that you are not just some woman. You are more. You are special, and we want to cherish you. Let us.
Christ, the way he said those words, she wanted to get down on her knees and thank the Lord. But instead, she just nodded. I'll see you tonight. Thank you for the invite.
Don't thank me yet. Wait until it's over. You might regret those words.
Kane let his frustrations loose on a piece of wood. How could he convince the only woman that he and his wolf wanted to take a chance on them? He told Blake what she'd said. They had been hopeful that with time she would change her mind. It was clear that he needed to take drastic measures. He put another piece of wood on the trunk, his mind drifting back a few nights to when they'd been at her home. She had been so sexy, willing to allow both men to do as they pleased with her. It would have been so natural for the three of them to be together. And though they had shared women previously, this was the first time they'd shared a future mate.
A gust of wind blew his hair over his face. The breeze cooled some of the frustration riding him. How could he do it? How could he convince her that she was the right one for them? His chest ached at the thought that she might not want to be with them for the long run. He no longer cared that she could or could not shift, that she might not take the change. All he wanted was more time. Time with Daniela. In his years as Alpha, he learned that he had to work really hard to get what he wanted and not allow anyone to get in his way. But what was he to do if the one getting in his way was the one he wanted? His mother had always told him one of his qualities as a leader was being able to think about obstacles and figure out strategic moves to get what he wanted. Whether it was with his pack or life in general, he knew everything was about strategy. So what if she did not shift? He no longer cared about that. It had taken spending time with her, without knowing it was her, for them to realize she was who they had been missing, the woman they had been missing. His pack members were not stupid. They wouldn't question him unless they felt her being in the triad would somehow mess with the pack. Besides, he'd fight every single one of them for her. It was obvious to him and the animal within. There was just her. He needed to figure out how to make her see it. His phone buzzed. Marcos. He could pick up the phone and lie to his friend, but he refused to do that. So he rejected the call until he was ready to admit to his friend how much he and Blake wanted Danny. Until he was ready to tell him how bleak the future seemed without her. It would take Marcos time to understand that they weren't trying to use Danny for sex, that they truly wanted a long-lasting relationship with her. He thought back to her beautiful brown eyes and long dark hair. Just the thought of touching her, watching her smile and say something silly, made him grin. She was so cute when she was confused. Back when she'd been a teen, they'd stayed away from her. Ignoring the pull of their animals to her had been hard, but friendship had been more important. Now all he could think about was taking her, mating her, keeping her and cherishing every moment with her. No, Marcos wouldn't understand that at all. He swung the axe again, the new piece of wood splitting in half and falling to either side of the tree trunk he'd been working on. He stood up straight, rubbing the back of his hand over his forehead and wiping his brow. He needed a shower. The pile of wood would be great to keep Danny warm once winter came. Fall was fast approaching, and he intended to make sure her every comfort was taken care of. "Are you working yourself to death?"
his mother asked at his back. He slammed the axe down, locking it in the center of the trunk, and turned to face her. This was going to be hard. She'd been right all along.
"Hello, Mom. What brings you over?"
He already knew, though. Her cat that ate the canary smile told him all he needed to know.
"So, how was your date?"
"Fucking incredible."
"It was good."
Her grin widened.
"That's all? Care to tell me anything about your woman?"
He shook his head, moving past her to head to the laundry room next to the kitchen.
"What do you want to know?"
"What's she like?"
"I'm sure your friend Mrs. Wilder has given you a heads up already."
She laughed.
"She only confirmed what I knew."
"And that was?"
"That you were too blind to see what was in front of your face. That all these years, ignoring Daniela had been the stupidest thing you and Blake have ever done."
He slipped out of his dirty jeans and sweaty t-shirt.
"It's not stupid. We value our friendship with Marcos. We've been staying away from her at his request."
He entered the kitchen and caught her rolling eyes.
"So what changed now? It's not like you've done anything different. Why did you finally decide to say the hell with what Marcos told you both and take matters into your own hands when it comes to Danny?"
They wanted her, plain and simple.
"It's not that we don't care about Marcos's request any longer, but now we're more concerned with her wants. She wants us."
She nodded and threw a long strand of blonde hair behind her ear.
"How do you propose to keep her and the friendship?"
That was harder than accepting Danny wanting them. They might lose their friend. She was human. They might lose their pack. And getting Danny to understand she was the one meant to fulfill the role of alpha triad mate was going to be an even bigger challenge since she kept ignoring them whenever it was brought up.
I don't know. I hope he can understand.
She sighed and tapped his sweaty arm. I'm sorry, son. I know your friendship with Marcos means the world to you. They'd been friends since they were teens. Marcos had always been overly protective of Daniela. She was a bigger girl, and some of the kids had made fun, which in turn had made Marcos do anything to shield her from the bullies. But even his overprotectiveness hadn't stopped Danny from developing into a smart-mouthed, sexy, curvy temptress. Through the years, he'd learned to shut his wolf up when it wanted to get near Danny. Marcos had always had his back, just like Blake. When his father and his Omega had passed in a plane crash, Marcos was the first person to offer support. He had stood up next to him, offering to take on anyone who wanted to fight for the alpha position. Fortunately, at the time, it hadn't been necessary, but he learned that Marcos would never allow anyone to be with his sister if he thought she was being used. So he'd need to speak to Blake about being honest with their friend. He wanted Marcos's blessing. Daniela had been a forbidden fruit for far too long. Now, all he could think about was touching her, watching her push her sexy little glasses up the bridge of her nose and pout in surprise when she was caught off guard. He'd stood outside the library for a while, watching her read something on her computer screen. She'd smiled, frowned, and cocked her head, as if that would help her understand whatever was confusing her. But it was the fact that she'd been so unaware of her sex appeal that he loved. He'd watched her the night of the ball. She'd walked in with that sexy, itty-bitty costume and floored him. He hadn't known that it was her, but his first instinct was to take her. And when he'd realized he couldn't scent her, he still knew that she was special to him, that they shouldn't waste any time and take her as their own. "What are you going to do about Danny?" his mother asked, breaking into his thoughts.
We're going to do whatever we can to keep her. She's coming over tonight, so we can spend some time together.
She nodded. "It's a good thing you can cook, or I'd worry about you. You are such a good man, Kane. I know you are bossy, but you have that in your genes. From your father, of course." She always told him that whenever she felt he needed a pep talk. Right now, he didn't. What he needed was a way to get Danny naked later, and then he wanted her agreement to join in their alpha triad.
I need her to willingly agree to be with us.
Damn, that's going to be tougher than sex, son. He filled a cup with cold water and frowned.
Why? Why is that harder than sex? You'd think it would be the opposite.
She shook her head with a small smile. Not at all. Women fantasize all the time about two hot men wanting them. You and Blake are probably a dream come true. But reality? That's scary. A relationship with two men? Most women don't think that can work, especially human females. We know the score. Other shifters know what's needed to make a triad work. Sex is fun. It's easy. All you need is chemistry and you're good. A relationship takes work, effort, commitment.
I'm committed to making sure this works with Danny.
That's because you already know deep down she's the one for you. In the human world, a person doesn't know that quickly. They don't have an animal giving them guidance and an extrasensory perception. All they have is their gut instinct. She'd have to follow her gut. Make sure that all your promises to her are things she wants as well.
Thanks, Mom.
He bent down and kissed her cheek. She smiled and sighed. I wish there was more I could do to help you, but I know this is all about you and Blake. Make it special, Kane. Make her feel like she's the only one for you, because that's exactly how it is. He nodded. It was time to make Danny realize how special she was. That evening, he went with his gut and decided to surprise her with something out of the ordinary. He'd done a lot of work lighting up the trees that led to a cool cliff overlooking the valley. There, he'd set up a picnic,
and even went as far as laying out cushions and blankets for their time together. He wanted to make sure she understood this was for her, that it was all about making her feel special. "10. Danny shivered in her pretty red flats. The black and red polka dot dress had been a bargain find, and she loved wearing it because it made her feel pretty and feminine. She'd even curled her hair for Kane. Not just curled with a hot iron, but spent hours straightening the frizzy hair and then curling it to make big, bouncy curls. If he knew the time she'd burned herself with that thing, he'd think she was nuts for sure. She left her car near his cabin and made it to the front door without tripping over her own 2 feet. Whenever she was nervous, she tended to get really clumsy. Marcos loved making fun of that, but she would just smack him upside the head and call him a jerk. She knocked softly, knowing he'd probably heard her arrive with his super shifter hearing anyway. Not a minute later, Kane opened the door, and she forgot how to breathe. He dressed up. For her. It was like something out of a movie. He'd put on a nice, perfectly pressed black dress shirt and slacks. Gone were his well-worn and sometimes torn jeans that hugged his ass better than should be legal. His used t-shirts were gone, and the dress shirt sleeves were rolled up, showing impressive forearms. "Hi," she said, almost swallowing her tongue. He smiled, pulled her into his arms, and pressed his lips over hers in a scorching kiss. Then he pulled back, his smile full of heat. "You look beautiful." Well, okay then. She wished she could bottle both him and Blake and keep them forever. How were they still single when both men wanted a mate more than anything in the world? "Thanks." He grabbed her hand, enveloping it with his much bigger, warmer one. "Come on. I have a surprise for you." She didn't get a chance to look around the inside of his house. He tugged her through a giant living room with only the bare necessities, and then through a giant kitchen, fit to feed an army, to the back door. When they got to the yard, he lifted her hand to his lips and grinned. "Are you ready?" She was worried about asking for what, so she nodded instead. He flipped a switch near the door, and a row of trees lit up with white lanterns. She gasped, turning to face him, and smiled. "Wow, this is impressive." He laughed and hugged her to his side. "There's more." More than pretty lights? She really wasn't sure why he had gone to the trouble. Not that she'd complain, but all this romance made it hard to keep her feelings from trying to make something out of a dinner date. With every step they took, she became more and more enthralled in the amount of work he'd put into decorating these trees. It was a good few hundred yards before they reached the cliff overlooking the valley. There, he'd set up various lanterns, a giant blanket with their meal, and another one with cushions to sit or lay on. "Oh my God!" she shrieked, rushing over to look at the beautiful view from the ground. She could see the valley and the moon and stars from that spot. Not to mention there was a giant tree right next to the blankets, which he'd hung more lanterns from. The entire thing looked like something out of a fairy tale. "Do you like it?" he asked, his wicked smile filled with pride. He knew she loved it. "What do you think?" She ran back and threw her arms around him, pulling his head down for a kiss. "This is really an amazing way to start a date, Kane." He kissed her long and hard, twisting his tongue over hers and lighting a new fire at her core. Her body throbbed with need. There was no urgency to his kiss. It was like he was only teasing her into seeing how good he was. After making her so turned on she was ready to rip out of her clothes and ask him to take her then and there, he pulled away and shook his head. "Not yet, little red." She groaned and pouted. "Are you still going to keep calling me that? It's not like you don't know who I am now." He lifted a hand to caress her cheek, moving slowly to cup her neck, and then grabbing a fistful of hair to pull her head back. She gulped, loving this unexpected aggression in him.
"You're my little red,"
he breathed, his lips hovering just above hers.
"I keep visualizing you in that tiny outfit."
His gaze locked on her lips before sweeping over her face.
"I keep remembering your legs spread open with your wet pussy on display."
She whimpered. She remembered it too, better than he knew. "Kane, that was—"
"You. The you that you try to hide. You're a sensual woman, Daniela. I loved having my tongue inside you. I loved having my cock inside you. But more than that, I loved seeing that side of you."
"Why?"
"It's who you really are. Don't hide behind your glasses,"
he said, pulling away the glasses and shoving them in his shirt pocket.
"Don't hide the beauty we both know lies beneath your clothes."
No man had ever spoken of her body in that way. No man had ever made her feel as if she was absolutely perfect as she was. Kane and Blake did that. It was why she was having a hard time keeping her feelings at bay. They were catering to the insecure woman inside her, the one who hated to hear men tell her she needed to drop the pounds or cover her body because she had too many curves.
"Come,"
he said, pulling her down on the blanket with all the cushions. He opened containers of salad, grilled chicken, fruit, cheese, cookies, and cakes. He filled her plate with food and handed it over with a napkin and a fork. She stared at the food in awe. "Did you cook this?" He nodded, reaching for a bottle of wine and 2 crystal wine glasses.
"Yes."
That was it. Just yes. No boasting about how hard he'd worked making a meal for her, or even telling her she was lucky he'd cooked at all, instead of getting takeout or having her eating burgers. Kane was a man that treated her better than any other that had already gotten into her pants yet. "You did a great job. I had no idea you knew how to cook." She ate slowly, enjoying the selection of items on her plate. He shrugged and handed her a glass of wine before sipping his own.
"My mom was home cooking many hours of the day when I was young, and I told her I wanted to help her do it."
She raised her brows. "With your father being an alpha, that didn't cause problems?" He shook his head and licked his lips. She forgot all about the food on her plate.
"My dad was an alpha, but he was also part of the alpha triad with his omega and my mom. His omega helped center him and kept him from making decisions that would hurt my mother or our family, not to mention our pack."
She thought about what he said for a moment. "Is that how it will be with you, Blake, and your mate?" The smile dropped from his lips.
"Yes, our mate will have both sides of our personalities. Once mated, a link forms between the 3 of us. It's why not just any woman will do."
She blinked. Wow, that sounded harder than finding true love. People found that all the time. Then they divorced it a few years later. "How do you know if you found the right woman?" She stopped eating, put the plate to the side, and took a sip of her wine. He leaned forward, his open collar pressed against his chest, and showed off a hint of the muscles hidden beneath. That body. He was going to drive her crazy soon from wanting to see him with the shirt off.
"We'll know we found the right woman,"
he said, curling his hands around her waist and setting her on his lap like she weighed no more than a feather.
"When both of us and our animals feel a connection to her."
She wiggled on his lap, feeling the hardness of his erection pressing against her ass and turning her throat dry even as she drank wine. "You mean to tell me both of you and your inner beasts have to want the woman?"
"Not just want her."
He pushed the hair blowing across her face over her shoulder.
"We have to feel some kind of deep, meaningful connection, more than sexual chemistry."
She met his gaze, losing herself in the pool of gold in his eyes. "I don't understand."
"It's a feeling, Like you finally come home. She sighed. Her heartbeat tripped in her chest. He leaned into her. The thing is, Little Red, I'm already home. Oxygen punched in and out of her lungs. Desire thickened her blood to the consistency of molasses. Lord, how could she survive the rest of this meal without doing something stupid like asking him to eat her instead? She didn't get a chance to ponder that question too much. Once their lips met, everything else flew out of her mind. He kissed her softly, tentatively, almost as if giving her a chance to back away. She put the wine glass down, not caring if the thing spilled over. She grabbed the collar of his shirt and turned over to straddle him, placing her legs on either side of him and rocking over his cock. Her pussy ached with need and desperation. She rubbed her palms over his chest. He was hard. She wanted so badly to touch the warm flesh hidden by the soft material. She tugged at the buttons, jerking until the shirt flew open. The moment her fingers touched his skin, she knew what he'd meant about feeling like being home. Both he and Kane had given her that feeling of perfect connection, not just with the way they touched her body and made her go up in flames, but from the looks, the touches, and the words that somehow hit a deep chord inside her. He splayed his hands on her thighs, pushing her dress up and over her head, causing them to break their kiss for it to come off. She allowed him to remove it, not even a little worried over him seeing her naked any longer. He kissed his way down her chest, tugging away the bra straps and freeing her breasts. Then, just when she thought it couldn't get any better, he sucked a nipple into his mouth, and she saw stars. She moaned, arched her back, and pushed her chest forward. He cupped her ass with his other hand, squeezing and then tearing at her panties. There wasn't time to think too hard. His mouth moved from nipple to nipple, licking, sucking, biting. Her world had narrowed down to feeling. She gripped his hair in her hands, sliding her fingers through his soft locks, and then digging her nails into his skull. Her body moved over his involuntarily. She couldn't stop rocking over his pants, wanting him inside. Each pull and tug he did on her nipples with his teeth sent fresh charges of heat down to her clit. Pulling away from him was hard, but she wanted him inside her. She crawled back until she was able to help him pull down his pants and take off his shirt. Once he was naked, then she was happy. She pushed him to lay flat on the blanket with a cushion under his head. "Come here," he said, his order low and rough. She grinned, shaking her head. "No way. I get to touch you now." He raised a brow, his eyes bright with his animal. "Touch me then, Little Red. I want your hands and lips all over me." He didn't have to tell her twice. She moved up to his face, hovering above him, and kissed his jaw. He had a few days-old beard that tickled her lips. She found the damn beard so sexy, just like his animal side. It reminded her how wild Kane was, how he had two sides that were opposites, but could still make her insane with desire for him. She licked her way down to his nipples and bit down on one of his tiny buds. "Fuck, Danny." He jerked under her, lifting his hips to rub his erection on her wet sheath. He moved his hands up to her hair, holding the strands away from her face. Flicking her tongue in circles over his skin, she tortured him a little longer. "Like that?" she asked, wanting to hear his thoughts. "Baby, I fucking love it. Your mouth is pure magic. I've told you that before." He had, the night of the masquerade. He told her that when she'd sucked his dick. She continued licking her way down to his navel. His abs contracted under her kisses. She bit down on his belly button and heard him suck in a breath before going lower. Finally, she reached his hard length. She wasted no time and licked from base to crown, enveloping the head of his cock with her lips. "Little Red, suck my dick, baby."
She let her saliva dribble down the sides of his cock and jerked him off as she sucked him deeper into her mouth. His moans and groans were music to her ears, not to mention the way he gripped her hair, urging her head down to take him further, was sexy as hell. She sucked her cheeks in, ignoring the pinch of pain starting to take hold of her jaw, in favor of bobbing her head up and down over him. "That's it. Take me deeper. God, you have a tight little mouth. Do that thing with your tongue again." He groaned. She swooshed her tongue from side to side, sweeping it on the underside and then up to the head of his cock. She jerked him in her grasp. He felt harder, like her touch made him even more aroused. "Watching you do that is so fucking sexy. My dick sliding into your mouth and coming out wet with your saliva is so hot." She agreed, taking him deep into her mouth and pulling back to see his cock, coated with her saliva, was more of a turn-on than she could have imagined. "Come on, little red. Spread your legs and take my cock into your wet pussy," he said, pulling her head away from his shaft. "It's time for me to get inside you, balls deep." Frickin' hell, the man was a talking sex freak, and she loved it. She crawled back over him, placing a leg on either side of him and holding him with one hand while she lowered her body to his. She placed the head of his cock at her entrance and slapped her hands on his chest, using him for leverage. He held her by the waist and pulled her down, lifting to slide into her in one smooth glide. She gasped, digging her nails into his chest. Her body shook. Her pussy muscles stretched to accommodate him. The combination of pain and pleasure overwhelmed her senses. "Oh, baby, I was right. You're still just as tight as the first time." She didn't know what to say, so she licked her lips and wiggled her hips. He took that as a sign to move and lifted her up and brought her back down in a swift drop. His dick raised her inner muscles until she was left tingling from the sensations he brought out in her. "Do you like me fucking you, Daniela?" She whimpered and rocked her hips in a slow wave over him. The movement kept him deep in her body, but he pressed at different areas inside her. New nerve endings flared to life with ardent need. "Tell me," he ordered, lifting his hands to her chest and pinching her nipples. "God, yes!" The pain and pleasure drove her to near madness. He squeezed her breasts, pulling at her aching points repeatedly. Her muscles felt tight and sore. Her pussy felt on fire. She continued rocking on him faster and faster. When she felt the tightening inside, she grabbed one of his hands and brought it down between her legs. She met his gaze and moaned. "Play with my clit. Make me come." He rubbed his thumb over her hard little pleasure center. She shut her eyes, unable to fight the pull to let herself go. Her body moved on autopilot. "Come, little red. Let go," he murmured. She pinched her own nipples, adding more pleasure to the one building inside. "Oh, my..." He pressured her clit harder. She rocked faster, faster, and then it all stopped. "Fuck, baby. Your pussy is squeezing tight." The tension unraveled so fast, she shook as wave after wave of pleasure washed over her. Sights and sounds came alive. Breaths pounded in her ears, and her heart tried to thump out of her chest. She might have screamed, but she didn't know for sure. She felt as if she'd been swimming underwater, and everything sounded far away. Kane howled loud, his hands gripping her waist tight. He pressed her down until their pelvises kissed, and he was deep inside her, his cock pulsating, filling her with his cum. It took her long moments to catch her breath and remember where she was and what they were doing. Kane pulled her down to lay on his chest. He was still inside her, and she didn't want him out. "Will you be our mate?" 11. His question caught her off guard. She raised her head,
her breath still coming out ragged, and then she frowned. "Why me?" She lifted off him, not wanting to discuss something so important with so little clothing on. He must have seen the indecision on her face, because he didn't try to stop her. Instead, he passed her the dress she had on earlier and started putting his pants back on. Once they were both clothed, he pulled her back down to sit next to him, both facing the view of the valley below. He refilled her wine glass and handed it to her. Her nerves were all over the place. As much as she loved the idea of being theirs, the reality of her being a human and them needing a shifter wasn't lost on her.
"You're the one," he said softly. "The only one for us."
She took a sip of her wine and stared down at the tiny, bright lights below. She loved living in the area. The town was small, and everyone knew everyone. One of the things she appreciated was how nobody judged the shifters surrounding them. On the contrary, because of Kane and Blake, there was a team of his men that kept watch over the town to ensure crime stayed low. Shifters in their valley were adored, like chocolate in a room full of PMSing women. Still, she knew that the power Kane and Blake wielded meant both men needed someone like them, a strong shifter.
"You need a shifter. I heard Marco say it once."
He took a deep breath and let it out slowly.
"Normally, we've had shifters to create the Alpha Triad, but there have been other packs who've incorporated human females, and they are strong, if not stronger, than having a shifter female."
She bit her bottom lip and gave him a side glance. His facial features were tense, and she knew he was worried about what she thought. She didn't know how she knew, but she did.
"What about your friendship with Marcos?"
She held her breath and waited to hear his next words. Her brother had been the reason Kane and Blake had kept her at a distance for years. How would they react when Marcos was back in town?
"He'll need to understand. We want to make you happy."
She glanced down at her wine glass.
"I need more, Kane. More time with you both. This is not an easy decision that I can make lightly. We'll be forever linked, and I know how shifter mating works. There's no divorce. So whatever happens, I'll need to learn to deal with it."
She lifted her gaze and glanced at him.
"I want to make the best decision, not just for me, but for all of us."
He nodded, not pushing the issue.
"You're right. We'll spend more time together. We'll do other things, and hopefully that will show you that we're serious about mating with you."
Christ, mating with her. It was like the world had gone upside down. Everyone always said to be careful what you asked for. She'd asked for both men for so long, and now that they were ready, willing and able, she was not sure it was the right thing to do. Not for lack of sexual chemistry, but for fear that she wasn't the right one for them. The next few days, she saw them individually again. Blake took her to a movie, and Kane took her for a hike. Sadly for Kane, he discovered during their hike that she hadn't gone hiking in years and was in serious bad shape. They ended up having to stop every few minutes for her to rest. Whoever invented hiking in hills and mountain trails needed to be shot in the balls. The three were on a group date a week later when they discussed the topic of the pack and their acceptance.
"What happens if your pack doesn't like that I'm human?"
She sat on the bed, between both men. Kane placed a kiss on her shoulder, while Blake drew circles on her palm with his finger.
"They have to accept you. Kane is Alpha. Nobody goes up against him. They know I have his back,"
Blake said. That didn't really answer the question. Could others get angry? Fight? She hated the idea of bringing them problems. Marcos had always spoken of the respect the pack had for both men. The last thing she wanted was to bring tension into their lives.
"There's always a possibility that someone will want to fight when there is a change. Shifters, especially wolves, tend to like to be leaders. Only the strongest can do it. Kane is a formidable alpha. He's stronger than anyone in the pack." "That's physically," Kane said. "With Blake by my side, I'm even more. If we add you, The three of us would be unbeatable. Not to mention we'd have an even deeper link between me and Blake. You'd center us, give us the ability to lead with a human and soul-reaching connection.
She leaned back against the pillows, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Spending time with them had reinforced the feeling she'd developed long ago. This wasn't just lust. There was a big amount of that, but once you took that away, she was left wanting to spend time with both men anyway. She wanted to do simple things, like have them watch their stupid sports while she read romance novels in bed. It was still amazing to her that they didn't fight over time with her, or over who got to do what with her. They were so connected that they encouraged the other to do whatever made him happy. The result ended up being that they divided their time evenly with her. If one came over to the library to meet her for lunch, the other one would spend time with her at dinner. Maybe the three would share meals or her bed, but it was never about spending more time with one over the other. She'd been confused at first, thinking it was just not possible for it to work. But it had. It had, and now she didn't want it to stop. Now she wanted it to continue just like this, for them to be with her and make love to her and make her feel like she was the most precious person in their lives. Marcos would return from his trip in a few days. How would his opinion impact the friendship of almost 20 years with the Shifters? And more importantly, how would he react to knowing his sister had mated the two? That is, if she accepted their proposal. She leaned into Kane, loving that he immediately pulled her into a hug.
"What's wrong?" he asked. "I can tell something's bothering you."
She glanced up at him with a sad smile. "I love Marcos. He's always been there for me. I don't want to hurt his feelings." Blake sighed and lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her softly at the center of her palm.
"We know. We don't want to damage our friendship with him either."
"What do we do?" she asked. She didn't get a response. Her cell phone rang. A glance at the screen, and she cringed. It was Tom. Again. She tried to politely decline his continued invitations, stating she was now seeing someone new. Other times, she'd plain ignored his calls. He was never rude or mean, just pushy, and that pushiness was starting to get on her last nerve. She sent the call to voicemail and hoped he would stop calling. The past few weeks, he'd acted like none of the times she'd rejected his proposals had ever happened. He'd continued to invite her for dinners and outings. At first she thought he meant to continue their friendship, which she was more than happy to do. But then she'd heard from one of her coworkers that he'd come by on her day off and had told them that she was seeing him. That was an outright lie, and she'd called him on it. He denied ever saying it, but she didn't trust him anymore. The friendship they'd shared was tainted with his inability to accept her refusal.
"Is everything okay?"
Blake asked, his shrewd gaze on her face. "Yes, everything's good." She'd have to tell Tom a little more forcefully that he needed to cut his crap and let it go. She'd gone to some outings with him as a friend, but had never promised him anything. The day he'd proposed, she'd been so shocked she hadn't known what to say. Who the hell proposed to someone without knowing them? Without kissing them? Hell, without even touching them? Tom did. She wasn't going to think about him and his need to have a non-existent relationship with her. She needed to decide what to do about Kane and Blake. "Suppose we meet it, and I don't change. What happens then?" The tension-filled silence didn't reassure her much. She glanced at Kane for this one. He slipped a hand into her hair and caressed her scalp.
"Nothing happens. Our link would still form, whether you shift or not. The pack would accept you."
For some reason, she didn't think that was all. He was holding back, probably to keep her from worrying. Too bad, since she was already worried about what that meant for them. "And if they don't?"
"We'll make them accept you."
She frowned, looking deep into his bright, golden eyes. "Can you do that?" His jaw tightened.
"I'm Alpha. I can do anything."
She really needed to remember to try and piss him off just to see what makeup sex would be like with him. Angry and growly. She'd bet it'd be amazing. The time to make a decision was now. They weren't going to wait on her forever, and she wanted to get on with living. This hush-hush relationship was starting to stress her. She loved them both. There. It was crazy but true. For someone to be able to love two men was something she'd never really thought possible, but when they came to you as a team, it was hard not to. Blake and Kane were like a single man divided in two. Kane the alpha protector, and Blake the emotional rock. Both created the perfect man, and she could have them or she could let them go and allow some other woman to be their mate. Screw it. She wasn't giving them up for anyone. I'll do it. Kane cupped her cheek and forced her chin up. You want to be our third? She smiled at the surprise in his voice. Then she glanced over at Blake, who appeared not surprised at all. Yes, I do. I've come to realize that you only live once, and this is how I want to do it, with you both by my side. Kane pulled her face into his for a kiss, and then Blake did the same. It all felt so natural, to be kissed by both men. Are you sure? Blake asked. Worry filled the depth of his eyes. Yes. If Marcos doesn't like it, I'll have to kick his ass into changing his mind. She laughed. How does this work? Kane stared deep into her eyes and answered, We take you at the same time, and then I get to give you the mate bite on the back of your shoulder, as I am alpha. Blake will bite you at the same time on your opposite shoulder from the front. Ouch. That was a lot of biting. So when do we do this? She glanced back and forth between the two and shivered at the lust in their gazes. Now, Kane declared. We make you ours now. Worked for her. More hot sex was something she'd never decline. She watched them hop off the bed to get rid of their boxers, both sporting an impressive erection. She shrugged out of her panties and tank top, ready to play. Looks like you boys were holding out on me. Kane grinned, opening the top drawer of her dresser, pulling out a bottle of lube, and throwing it on the edge of the bed. The men moved to the front of the bed, both standing there, showing her what would soon belong to her. We're always hard for you, Little Red. Always for you, and only you, Kane said. Yeah, she loved hearing those words. More than that, she loved seeing the truth behind his words on their bodies. She crawled to the edge of the bed, hopped off, and grabbed Blake by the shoulders, pulling him to her. Their lips meshed in a tongue-tingling kiss. He cupped her face, holding his head at an angle to dip deeper into her mouth. Kane moved in from behind, pushing between her and the bed. He kissed his way down her bare back. She moaned into the kiss. Kane's hands swept down to her butt. He kissed his way to her cheeks, taking small bites of her curvy hips and groaning every few seconds. A sharp smack sounded as his hand made connection with her ass. She jerked from the pain and delightful pleasure of the tap. Your ass is fucking gorgeous, Kane groaned, licking down her crack, circling her hole and moving to her pussy. She gasped at the multitude of sensations assaulting her. Heat, cold, pleasure, and an instant tightening in her gut. Blake cupped her breasts, squeezing her tits and pinching her nipples between thumb and forefingers. Moisture fell down her legs from her wet folds. She rocked her hips, pushing back into Kane's face. He drove his tongue into her, thrusting and retreating, licking and sucking on her sensitive flesh and sending her temperature soaring. Blake devoured her with his lips. His tongue worked her mouth with the same erotic moves that Kane used on her pussy. Thrust, retreat, suck, lick. Dear God, she was going to melt into a puddle of nerve endings soon. Kane spread her cheeks open and licked from clit to ass, then back again. He lapped at her like a starving man. desperate for more. He pressed a finger around her hole, and she relaxed into his touch. He pushed in, slowly working his finger in and out of her ass. She moaned, gripping his hair with one hand behind her, while using the other to keep Blake making love to her mouth. Blake pulled back. His golden gaze was pure hunger. "I want to fuck you." She nodded. "I want that too." He kissed her lips, her jaw, and the curve of her neck. "We're going to stuff you with cock." She swallowed hard, unable to stop the whimper that left her lips. Her belly quaked from the internal shudders rocking her body. Kane sucked on her clit and growled. The sound sent waves of vibration shooting up her body. She felt her legs weaken, but Blake was there, holding her up. She loved the look of adoration on his face. The past few weeks had shown her what a sweet pair of men they were. Though complete opposites, they somehow managed to blend perfectly together. She reached down and grabbed hold of Blake's cock, stroking him and fondling his balls, while her body tensed and ready to come. "Oh, God! Blake licked around her earlobe, thrusting his cock into her hand and helping her jerk him off. "That's it, our curvy goddess. Come for us." She blinked fast, trying to keep the world in focus, but her world turned fuzzy. "Blake!" "Do it, Danny. Come so we can fuck you every way possible. I want my dick in your pussy, and Kane will fill your ass with his cock." The words, combined with Kane's sucking on her clit, sent her over the edge. Thunder and lightning exploded inside her. Then came the calm after the storm. A massive tidal wave of pleasure glided over her body like a second skin. She wasn't coherent enough to notice much, but soon Blake was sitting on the bed, and she was straddling him. She lowered over Blake, taking his cock into her pussy in a slow, sensual slide. She loved the way he stretched her. Her body went hot and cold at the same time. Once she was fully seated, with Blake pulsing deep inside her, she leaned forward and kissed him. Blake spread her ass cheeks, while something cool crawled down her crack. It was lube. Kane worked his fingers into her asshole slowly, scissoring them in and out of her. "Relax, little red," he whispered, licking the back of her shoulder. He continued to stretch her until he fit 3 fingers snugly in there. "Baby, you're so tight, so fucking tight." Blake continued kissing her and rocking her ever so slowly over him so that he rubbed against her inner walls. She groaned at how good it felt. Kane pushed the head of his dick into her asshole. She tensed for a second and slowly relaxed, thrusting her butt at the new invasion. "That's it, beautiful. Relax and take me," he said in a low growl. Blake leaned back and took her with him, the move lifting her butt higher in the air and allowing Kane a better position to penetrate her. He continued to slowly enter and retreat in tiny little moves, each time going further inside her while her body adjusted to him. After a few more times of the slow, torturous strives, he plunged deep into her ass. She tore her lips from Blake's and moaned. Both men were big, and having them both in her at the same time was better than anything she could have ever imagined. Her muscles burned from exertion. She clutched at Blake's shoulders and rocked back and forth, at first taking the lead and loving the dual sensation of both men going in and out of her. My," she choked out. Kane curled an arm around her waist and thrust hard into her. "My turn to fuck you, princess." Blake took a page from his book and lifted his hips, driving in and out of her in tandem with Kane's movements. When one went in, the other pulled out. She whimpered. Her heartbeats thundered hard in her chest, robbing her of the ability to breathe. Sweat coated their bodies, and the slick slide of skin on skin was an erotic dance she'd never grow tired of.
Both men pounded her pussy and ass hard, her muscles locked in tension. Kane licked at the back of her shoulder, and Blake did the same to her left front side.
"I'm going to bite you when you come," Kane breathed by her ear. "I'm going to love feeling your ass squeezing me of my cum while I dig my canines into your back and make you mine."
She struggled to catch her breath. Kane slipped his other hand between her slick pussy folds and pressed on her clit. Her nubbin ached with the need to come. "Oh, Kane, yes, do that." Her brain faltered. Oxygen froze in her lungs, and when he tapped at the throbbing little bundle of nerves, her core cracked. She screamed, the intensity of her orgasm more than she could handle. Kane and Blake struck then. Kane bit the back of her shoulder, embedding his canines into her flesh and driving his cock harshly into her ass. Blake bit down on her front left shoulder and plunged deep into her pussy. The biting and harder thrusts sent her into a second climax. She trembled in their arms, her body no longer under her control. Her pussy grasped at Blake's driving cock, squeezing hard. Her ass clasped around Kane's dick. They groaned, their teeth still deep in her flesh, and then both men stopped their thrusting to jerk into her, filling her body with their cum. She was still riding the high from her orgasmic explosion for long minutes after. She tried to regain focus on what was going on when she felt the warm washcloths Kane and Blake used to clean her up. They bundled her in the bed shortly thereafter, with a man on either side. She leaned into Kane while pulling Blake closer from behind.
"You're ours now, Danny. Nothing can change that."
12. Daniela glared at Tom. He'd followed her to the front of Marcos's house and had started questioning her like she owed him something. "What are you doing here, Tom?" He glanced back and forth between her and Marcos's home. Both Kane and Blake would be there shortly. They were readying to talk to Marcos later.
"Why aren't you answering my calls?"
he demanded. Gone was the nice, gentle guy she'd come to know. In his place stood an angry man with bloodshot eyes and a disheveled appearance. "Tom, there's nothing between us." She gritted her teeth. "Don't you understand?" He folded his arms in front of him, a sure sign of defiance.
"I asked you to marry me."
"You don't even know me."
"What's going on here?"
Kane asked from behind him. He and Blake focused on Tom, their gazes locked on him like a predator would their prey. Tom was leaving. Despite it all, she didn't want to see him hurt. Tom had been a friend. Tom shook his head. The idiot.
"I'm not going anywhere until she tells me why she's hanging out with you two when I proposed to her."
Kane and Blake turned to her, their expressions so shocked. Had she not been so pissed, she would have found it comical.
"You were engaged?"
Kane yelled. She growled under her breath. "No, I was never engaged to Tom. He proposed and I said no."
"Who's engaged?"
Marcos asked, arriving at the worst possible time.
"Daniela, I proposed to her,"
Tom supplied again, bypassing the fact she'd said she wouldn't marry him. She bit her lip to keep from screaming. "I'm not engaged to anybody," she screeched. Marcos moved in on Tom.
"She says she's not engaged."
2 men and 2 women walked up Marcos's driveway, standing far enough to be seen, but not close enough to be spoken to.
"Shit,"
Blake growled.
"It's the enforcers." "What are you all doing here?"
Marcos asked, glancing around and then down to the people on his driveway.
"Anyone want to tell me what's going on?"
"I'll tell you," Tom jumped in. "Your sister refused to marry me. Me, a decent man. Instead, she chose to go rolling around, sleeping with these 2.
"What?"
Marcos's brows drew down in a scowl.
"What's he talking about?"
"She was supposed to marry me," Tom yelled. "I had it all worked out." Oh, God. Shit had officially hit the fan.
"Shut the hell up for a moment."
Marcos snapped at Tom,
and turned to face Kane and Blake.
"What does he mean, she's been sleeping with you two?"
The people down the driveway had crept up and closed the distance, surrounding them in a circle. She blinked, wondering what the heck those guys wanted.
"What are they doing here?"
Blake glared at one of the men, motioning for them to go.
"They wanted to see if you are good enough for the pack. They probably want to test you."
"What the hell?" Marcos asked, curling his hands into fists.
"Are you sleeping with my sister?"
Kane moved forward.
"We asked Daniela to be our mate."
"You what?" Marcos hollered. Danny winced at the anger in his voice. "Marcos, it's not that big a deal."
"Shut up!"
he screamed at her, the panic in his voice rising with each word.
"Do you have any clue what you've gotten yourself into?"
"Of course I do. I'm a grown woman." He shook his head, as if she didn't know what she was talking about.
"She can't be your mate."
He gave her a worried glance.
"Danny, I know you want to find love. You're a wonderful person, but this shifter lifestyle is rough. It's dangerous. It's not for a human." "I'm sorry you feel that way,"
Blake said soothingly, trying to pacify Marcus's agitation.
"But she's already accepted, and we've already taken her as ours."
You what?"
Marcus's eyes widened. He swung at Kane, connecting with his jaw. The move was so unexpected that if she'd blinked, she would have missed it. The sound of the hit was like a bullet being shot. A flurry of movement took place. One of the men watching them jumped in, his body shifting into that of his wolf. He went for her brother. Oh, hell no. She moved on instinct. The frustration Tom had fired up inside her escalated to a fever pitch. She growled, and something new and strong moved under her skin. The sound of snarls, bones popping, and a weird scream sounded so close to her she felt her stomach tighten. Her vision turned sharper. For a second, it was as if life had slowed down while she tried to reach the shifter going for her brother. Her body ached, and she swore she was going to fall flat on her face. But then she was moving faster, and things felt different. The air tasted crispier. She shoved at the wolf, charging at her brother, and she landed on the ground. The wolf growled, turning his body to face Marcos again. It took her a moment to realize she was down on all fours now. Her instinct to fight the animal was calmed for a second when she glanced up at Marcos, Kane, and Blake.
"What the fuck did you do to her?"
Marcos asked, his eyes wide with fear.
"Oh God, Danny, I'll get you some help."
She couldn't figure out what the heck he was yelling about. Until she glanced down, that is. Furry brown paws had replaced her hands. She snarled. She'd changed. Dear God, she'd been able to take to the shift, and had fur on her ass. There was no time to think about it now. Her focus returned to the shifter trying to get closer to Marcos.
"Liam,"
Kane growled.
"Stand down."
But Liam didn't stand down. He made another move for Marcos, and she jumped the wolf. He tried to shake her off, but she dug her claws deep into his side. Everyone yelled at the same time, but all she focused on was the jerk wanting to hurt her brother. She bit down on his ear, not sure why the taste of his blood didn't disgust her, or why she felt so much aggression.
"Stop, Danny. I need you to let Liam go."
She heard Blake say the words clearly inside her head, as if he'd whispered them by her ear. "No way! He's just going to go for Marcos again."
"He won't. I promise. He's one of our enforcers, and he was only trying to protect Kane when Marcos hit him."
They continued their telepathic conversation while she bit down on the other wolf. There was a need to fight inside her, to show the other wolf that she was not going to allow him to hurt her family. "Screw him! Doesn't he know friends fight?" She continued to claw at the bigger wolf's side. He shook her off, finally getting her off him. She landed on her ass and got back up, ready to run for the animal again. He bared his teeth, waiting for her attack.
"Stand down, Danny. You've proven to them that you're more than able to help us defend our pack."
Defend the pack? What was he talking about? She'd been defending her brother.
The wolf lowered his head, slowly creeping away from her.
There, I've sent him away. Come back to us.
She glanced up to where Marco stood, with a trench coat in hand, the front door thrown open behind him. I don't know how to change back.
It's easy, darling. Just tell the wolf you're in charge and visualize your human body,
Cain said out loud. She did that. Bones popped and fur receded. She glanced at her hands, and she was back in her curvy body. A very naked, curvy body. Cain helped her put on the trench coat so quickly, she didn't get a chance to feel embarrassed over being seen naked by so many people. She glanced around and noticed the other people had gone, along with the wolf she'd been fighting. Tom lay on the ground, his eyes closed. What happened to him? She asked, clearing her dry throat. Marcos glared at Tom's body.
He passed out when he saw you change.
He walked over to her slowly, his gaze studying her face with concern.
Are you okay?
She could more than see his fear for her. She scented it. The amount of concern he had for her was dizzying. She smiled and threw her arms around his neck, hoping to soothe some of his anxiety. I'm great, Marcos.
You're sure?
His voice trembled with unease. Yes. She moved back to stand between her men. I'm happy. Marcos glared at both men and then sighed, his shoulders drooping.
If that's the case, then I'm happy for you. I just don't want you to get hurt.
Cain spoke up.
We would never allow anyone to hurt her. Good, because if she ever tells me either of you did something to her, I will come hunt you both down.
She grinned. Marcos would never stop being overprotective.
Fair enough,
Blake said.
Are you okay with this now?
Marcos eyed him.
At least you two don't faint at the sight of someone shifting.
He grinned and winked at her.
Keep my sister happy, and I'll be okay with you for the foreseeable future.
Can we go inside now? She asked. I'd like to put some clothes on.
But why?
Blake laughed.
You look so delicious naked.
Whoa! Marcos yelled, shoving Blake out of the way and heading inside the house.
Not what I want to hear, ever.
Life as a human or a shifter was never easy, not when surrounded by alpha males. She smiled and loved the new connection she felt between her, Blake, and Cain. It was amazing to have such a depth of emotion going through them. That evening, they made a call together. Hello? Hi, Jerry. Daniela, Jerry said with excitement. How have you enjoyed mated life? Boy, news traveled fast. Great, it's wonderful. She leaned into Blake's side and rested her feet over Cain's. We just wanted to thank you for your help. We?
Yes,
Blake and Cain said. Ah, the hard-headed wolves. You know, Cain, your mother owes me dinner. He frowned.
She does?
She laughed, the tinkling sound clear across the line. Yes, she bet me I couldn't get the three of you to mate without you both realizing it was Danny.
Well, you did an amazing job of keeping her scent a secret the first day,
Blake said. I know, and no, I won't tell you how, but I am very happy you three found happiness. You are happy, aren't you, Daniela? Danny glanced from one man to the other and grinned. I'm very happy. They hung up the call, and she casually decided to let her feelings out in the open. I love you, big sexy Omega, she said, pulling Blake's face to hers and meshing her lips in a quick kiss. Then she tugged Cain over and kissed him. I love you, big sexy alpha.
I love you too,
they both said at the same time. She sighed and eyed the remote control Cain had in hand. So, want to shut the TV off and get freaky? The TV went off before she got a chance to finish the question. Epilogue. Jerry Wilder stared at her list of accomplished matches.
Maybe she could host a party and find out what each one was up to. It would sure be nice to know how Nita and her bear were doing, or even Alyssa and her tiger. Besides, she'd put out a call for an assistant. That would be a great way to finally get herself organized. Hopefully, the person she hired would be able to fulfill her needs. She had a large number of applications to go through, and not enough time to do it. She rifled through the applications and came upon 2 that caught her eye. She glanced back and forth between 2. A slow grin spread over her lips. Perfect. The end. This has been Curves 'Em Right, Paranormal Dating Agency, Book 4. Written by Millie Taiden. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Copyright, Lifetime, by Millie Taiden. Production copyright, 2015, by Millie Taiden.